Tonight, we're uncovering the full history of Hogwarts' darkest headmasters. This is a fascinating topic, but I'll keep my narration calm to ensure you can still drift off to sleep. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here, and if this is your first night, just comment night 1. Now back to the video. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry is often described as a beacon of safety, a sanctuary of ancient stone and warm candlelight where generations of young witches and wizards have found their way. But beneath the enchanted ceiling of the Great Hall and behind the gargoyle guarding the headmaster's office lies a much grimmer legacy. We often think of the office as the seat of Albus Dumbledore, a place of wisdom, twinkling eyes and sherbet lemons. Yet the high-backed chair behind that desk has been occupied by figures who did not seek to protect the students, but to mould them through fear, prejudice, and even dark magic. To understand the true history of Hogwarts, we must look away from the light of the torches and into the shadows cast by the men and women who nearly led the school to its ruin. Imagine walking through those corridors 1,000 years ago, when the foundations were still fresh and the air was thick with the raw, untamed magic of the 4 founders. It was here that the first darkness took root. Salazar Slytherin was not just a founder, he was a headmaster in his own right during those early experimental years. His vision for the school was one of exclusion and purity, a philosophy that would leave a stain on the castle walls for a millennium. What drove a man who helped build the most famous magical school in the world to hide a monster in its bowels? What kind of leader prepares a weapon to purge his own students long after he's gone? This was the beginning of a cycle, a recurring shadow that would fall over the school time and again. As we move through the centuries, the darkness changes its face. It isn't always found in the form of a hidden chamber or a deadly serpent. Sometimes the darkness is found in the cold, elitist indifference of a man like Phineas Nigellus Black. He is remembered as the most unpopular headmaster in the history of the school, a man who viewed his position not as a calling, but as a burden to be endured while looking down upon those he deemed inferior. Under his watch, the joy of the school was systematically dismantled, even down to the banning of Quidditch, stripping away the spirit of the student body to satisfy a personal sense of superiority. His reign reminds us that a leader doesn't need to be evil to be destructive, they only need to be devoid of empathy. Then there are the eras of tragic negligence and the subtle infiltration of darkness. Consider the long tenure of Armando Dippet. To many, he was a kindly, if somewhat frail, old man. But it was under his nose that the greatest dark wizard of all time, Tom Riddle, began his ascent. Dippet's inability to see the wolf in sheep's clothing led to the death of a student and the wrongful expulsion of an innocent soul. The darkness of this era was one of blindness, where the headmaster's office became a place of denial, allowing a shadow to grow until it threatened to consume the entire wizarding world. The modern era of Hogwarts has seen the most visceral shifts in power. We remember the pink, suffocating grip of Dolores Umbridge, a woman who turned the school into a prison under the guise of educational decrees. Her darkness was bureaucratic, a terrifying brand of authority that sought to break the will of every child in the castle. And finally, we must look at the most complex figure of all, Severus Snape. His year as headmaster was a period of absolute terror, with Death Eaters patrolling the halls, and the Cruciatus Curse used as a standard punishment. Yet his story is one of layers and lies, a man playing a part so dark that it nearly erased his soul. What does it mean for a school to be led by such individuals? How do these periods of shadow define the very stone and spirit of Hogwarts? Tonight, we are going deep into the archives to examine the lives, the tenures, and the lasting impacts of these dark leaders. We will explore the blood purity crusades of the founding era, the Victorian elitism of the Black family, the catastrophic failures of the mid-20th century, and the wartime regimes that turned classrooms into battlegrounds. We will look at how the castle itself responded to these leaders, how the headmaster's office sometimes refused to open for those it deemed unworthy, and how the portraits of the past continued to whisper their secrets to whoever sat in the chair. This is a journey through 1,000 years of magical history, seen through the eyes of those who held the ultimate power and chose to use it for the dark. Yeah, Hogwarts Castle looms eternal, its towers piercing the Scottish mist like jagged teeth, a labyrinth engineered not merely to educate, but to conceal. Every shifting staircase, every vanishing room, every hidden passageway pulses with an architectural psychology designed to breed secrecy, turning students and staff alike into unwitting guardians of buried truths. You can feel it in the way the walls seem to lean in, listening, as if the stone itself resents transparency, rewarding those who navigate its enigmas with power, while punishing the careless with isolation. Consider the Great Hall, vast and echoing, where 1,000 candles float above 4 longhouse tables, fostering tribal loyalties that divide as much as they unite. Slytherin's dungeon common room sinks below lake level, windows framing the undulating green gloom of merpeople, stirring primal fears of the submerged unknown, priming inhabitants for cunning survival. Gryffindor's tower soars high, firelit and bold, yet its height induces a subtle vertigo, a reminder that glory demands precarious balance. Hufflepuff's earthy burrows hum with comforting warmth, but their proximity to the kitchens whispers indulgence's temptations, binding loyalty through sensory indulgence. Ravenclaw's airy west tower, with its starlit domes, elevates the mind to abstraction, yet starves the body, enforcing intellectual detachment that borders on arrogance. This is no accident. The castle's design psychologically engineers allegiance, secrecy, and subtle rivalries, a fortress where knowledge is hoarded like gold in Gringotts, and trust erodes like ancient runes under rain. Deeper still, the forbidden forest encroaches, a living barrier of twisted oaks and acromantula webs, its perimeter patrolled not just by centaurs, but by the castle's own wards, which hum with ancient magic that repels intruders while luring the curious to peril. Secret passages snake behind one-eyed witches and through whomping willows, accessible only to those who decipher riddles or earn the loyalty of ghosts like nearly headless Nick. The Room of Requirements materializes only for the desperate or devious, shape-shifting to mirror hidden desires, be it a vanishing cabinet for dark escapes or a dueling arena for rebellion. Psychologically, this fosters paranoia. Every shadow could conceal a passage, every echo a spy. Dumbledore himself navigated these veins, yet even he couldn't map them all. The castle breathes suspicion, its architecture a silent enforcer of hierarchy, where the powerful conceal and the powerless seek in vain. At the heart of this fortress throbs the Headmaster's office, a circular sanctum perched high in the main tower, guarded by a stone gargoyle that demands passwords like sherbet lemon or baubles. Spiral stairs whirl you upward to a room aglow with silver instruments, whirring prophecies. Phoenix perches empty or aflame, and shelves groaning under the weight of forgotten spells. But here's the paradox. Is this a seat of wisdom, dispensing guidance through enchanted portraits of past headmasters who murmur counsel from oiled frames, or a throne of tyranny, from which one soul commands the castle's every secret? Those portraits, Dilys Derwent with her healing wisdom, Dexter Fortescue pondering deserts, watch eternally, hid in their eyes tracking successors, whispering alliances or betrayals. Yet power here isolates. The headmaster dines alone atop the tallest perch, privy to the sorting hat's murmurs and the pensieve's stolen memories, wielding authority to expel, appoint, or unleash house elves upon dissenters. You sense the duality in the office's very air. Golden sunlight filtering through arched windows one moment, then plunging into shadow as decisions darken. From this vantage, a headmaster can summon the entire staff with a single flu call, reshape curricula, or seal the school against the world. Wisdom manifests in Dumbledore's twinkling interventions, averting wars with lemon drops and half-moon spectacles. Tyranny emerges when that power curdles, as it has time and again, turning benevolence to oppression. The office doesn't choose its occupant, it amplifies them, fortress within a fortress, where secrets fester into legacies of light or shadow. This brings us to the Dark Lineage, a thread of headmasters whose tenures cast elongated shadows across a millennium of wizarding history, from the founding stones laid around 990 to the battle-scarred halls of 1998. Prejudice simmers in their veins, like Salazar Slytherin's pure blood venom. Dark events uncoil, as under Armando Dippet, when a hidden horror claimed young lives. Ministry puppets and Death Eater enforcers twist the throne, from Dolores Umbridge's pink-clad decrees to Severus Snape's shadowed regime. Unpopularity unites them. Phineas Nigellus Black, loathed for banning Quidditch over a purebloods bruise, or Umbridge, whose reign the castle itself rebuked by barring her entry. Portraits endure regardless, advising from gilt frames, a grim reminder that Hogwarts honours its tyrants alongside sages, their whispers echoing through centuries. These figures share traits that chill the blood, ties to the Chamber of Secrets' basilisk gaze, muggle-born purges, unforgivable curses as school discipline, renamed classes peddling propaganda. Slytherin sealed his monstrous legacy beneath the castle's heart. Black sneered at half-bloods from his Slytherin throne. Dippet scapegoated the innocent, while Tom Riddle slithered free. Umbridge etched lines into hands for insolence. Snape unleashed the Carrows to teach Muggle studies as hate. Brief reigns or long, contested or canonical, they disrupted the scroll of headmasters, equal men and women overall, yet this shadowed cadre skews male, their darkness contrasting Dumbledore's luminous half-century vigil from 1956 to 1997. Feel the weight of it as you trace the castle's corridors in your mind's eye, the damp Slytherin dungeons echoing with biased murmurs, the headmaster's tower isolated against howling winds, portrait's eyes glinting with judgments unvoiced. Hogwarts, fortress of secrets, cradles this dark lineage not as aberration, but as integral stone, its psychological architecture ensuring such shadows recur, testing each successor anew. What drove the first of them? The founder who chiseled exclusion into the very foundations. In the next chapter, Salazar Slytherin, the architect of exclusion, will descend into that primordial rift, uncovering how one man's vision birthed a millennium of division. Stay with me as the serpent stirs. That throne of tyranny in the headmaster's office found its first occupant in a man whose vision for Hogwarts was as serpentine as the house he founded. Salazar Slytherin, born around 990 in the marshy fens of England, descended from a line of ancient wizards who traced their magic back through centuries, untouched by Muggle blood. He poured his cunning into the castle stones, alongside Godric Gryffindor, Rowena Ravenclaw, and Helga Hufflepuff. But from the very beginning, a shadow coiled within his contributions. You can almost feel the chill of those early corridors, damp with the scent of lake water seeping through cracks, as the four founders gathered in what would become the Great Hall. Slytherin, with his sharp features and eyes like polished jet, argued passionately for a school that safeguarded wizardkind's purity. The others saw potential in every child with magic, no matter their birth. Gryffindor's fiery valour welcomed the brave from any stock. Ravenclaw prized intellect above lineage. Hufflepuff embraced loyalty in all its forms. Slytherin alone drew a line in the sand, insisting that only those of pure wizarding blood could master the deepest arts without diluting them. This ideological rift between the four founders gave birth to pure blood supremacy, a doctrine that would echo through generations like a curse whispered in the dungeons. Slytherin believed Muggle-borns carried a taint, their magic erratic and unstable, prone to betrayal under pressure. He spoke of ancient prophecies from his fen-dwelling ancestors, warning that mudbloods, his harsh word for them, would invite Muggle persecution back into the wizarding world. The arguments grew heated under torchlight, voices bouncing off unfinished walls, until Slytherin could no longer stomach the compromise. He stormed from the castle around the turn of the millennium, leaving his common room beneath the lake as a testament to his submerged rage. Yet even in departure, his influence lingered, reshaping what Hogwarts taught from its inception. The original curriculum, crafted in those founding years, blended practical magic with the wonders of the wizarding realm, charms to light the darkest nights, transfigurations that bent reality like willow branches, herbology drawn from the forbidden forest's edge, and potions brewed in cauldrons that bubbled with secrets. Astronomy mapped the stars from the tallest tower. History of magic recounted goblin rebellions and Merlin's triumphs. He defense against the dark arts, even then, warded against creatures that prowled the night. Slytherin himself excelled in potions, his recipes precise and potent, demanding a mind as steady as serpent venom. But woven into this tapestry was his vision of exclusion for the unworthy. He deconstructed the very idea of open education, proposing entrance exams not just of skill, but of blood status, records checked against ancient family grimoires. Muggle-borns turned away at the gates before they could even glimpse the castle's spires. The unworthy, in his eyes, were those whose veins mingled wizard and muggle, their magic a half-formed spark that could ignite disaster. He envisioned a curriculum stratified by purity, purebloods delving into legilimency and occlumency, the subtle arts of mind and shadow, while lesser students scraped by on basics. The other founders resisted, admitting all who showed the spark, but Slytherin's sorting hat, enchanted with his biases, would forever whisper preferences for cunning and ambition, sifting students into houses that mirrored his divides. Picture the young witches and wizards arriving by boat across the Black Lake, their faces pale with awe, unaware of the founder's hidden claws. Slytherin didn't just teach, he judged. His lessons in the Slytherin dungeons echoed with warnings of dilution, parables of families fallen through intermingling. He crafted the Basilisk, that monstrous serpent whose gaze could petrify the impure, not as a mere pet, but as a safeguard. Deep beneath the school, he sealed it away, accessible only to his true heir, and no weapon to purge the unworthy if they ever outnumbered the pure. This brings us to the psychological profile of a man who built a school while planning its purge, a paradox as twisted as the castle's own moving staircases. Slytherin was no madman ranting in isolation. He was a visionary architect, his hands shaping the Slytherin common room's emerald glow and underwater windows where merpeople glided like ghosts. Charismatic and brilliant, he commanded respect, his voice smooth as potion silk, persuading even skeptics with logic laced in prejudice. Yet paranoia festered beneath, born perhaps from the Fen's isolation, where Muggle persecutions had driven his kin into hiding. He saw enemies in every Muggle-born face, their presence a slow poison eroding wizarding dominance. His mind worked like a chess master, 10 moves ahead, found the school to unite wizards, then fracture it along bloodlines to preserve supremacy. Letters exchanged with the other founders, preserved in faded ink, reveal his growing disdain. He called Muggle-borns thieves of magic, arguing their admittance invited Muggle spies and diluted spells' potency. In quiet moments, sketching the Chamber of Secrets' labyrinthine tunnels, he must have felt a godlike certainty, his basilisk egg hatching in secrecy as the castle rose above. Was it fear or a cold calculus of survival? He embodied the duality of creator and destroyer, erecting walls of stone while plotting venomous judgment within. Generations later, his legacy slithered through the houses, fueling rivalries that scarred the school. Students in green-trimmed robes carried his emblem proudly, and while others whispered of his betrayal, the headmaster's portrait would watch silently, his painted eyes following successors, a reminder that power in that office could twist even the noblest foundations. Slytherin's departure didn't end his reign. It embedded his ideology like a curse in the castle's veins. As the founders' unity crumbled, the true horror stirred far below, in the damp echoes of a hidden chamber. What lurked there, waiting for an heir bold enough to unleash it? We'll descend into those depths next in Chapter 3, the Basilisk's Cradle, where the serpent's gaze first turned deadly. As the rift widened among the founders, Slytherin's vision of exclusion hardened into something far more sinister than mere curriculum debates or bloodline tests at the gates. He saw the school not just as a place of learning, but as a bastion that demanded absolute purity, even if it meant preparing for the unthinkable. Deep within the castle's labyrinthine bowels, while Godric Gryffindor raised defiant towers to the sky, and Helga Hufflepuff wove gardens of endless bounty, Salazar retreated to the shadows. There, in secrecy that would echo for centuries, he began constructing the Chamber of Secrets. This wasn't a mere hideaway or vault of forbidden knowledge. It served as a fail-safe for ethnic cleansing, a hidden weapon primed to eradicate any trace of Muggle-born blood from Hogwarts halls, should his warnings go unheeded. Imagine the chill of those early mornings around 990, when the castle still smelled of fresh mortar and enchantment. Slytherin, cloaked in wards that bent light and muffled sound, delved into the earth's veins beneath the Great Lake. He transfigured serpentine tunnels from living rock, coiling them like the veins of a colossal beast, each passage lined with runes that pulsed with anti-Muggle magic. At the heart lay the chamber itself, a vast echoing cathedral of damp stone, its floor etched with parcel-tongue commands that only he and his heirs could utter. He didn't labour alone in this abyss. Slytherin sought out the forbidden grimoires of ancient serpent lords from the Egyptian sands, texts that whispered of creatures born from the earth's darkest fury. With rituals spanning moons, he hatched the Basilisk, an immense serpent whose gaze alone could petrify the unworthy, its fangs dripping venom that dissolved flesh to bone. This monster became the chamber's guardian, slumbering in a colossal statue of Slytherin himself, mouth agape as an eternal portal. The air down there grew thick with the acrid tang of alchemical brews, the hiss of scales against stone, and the low rumble of enchantments sealing it all from the world above. Every brick he laid was infused with blood purity hexes, designed to awaken only when Muggle-tainted students roamed the corridors unchecked. It was his ultimate contingency. If the school felt a dilution, the Basilisk would rise, purging the castle floor by floor until purity reigned once more. Yet for all its malevolence, this darkest magic ever hidden in the castle evaded the other founders entirely. How could they miss it? Gryffindor, with his sword-sharp instincts for battle and betrayal, patrolled the battlements, but never sensed the subtle tremors beneath his feet. Rowena Ravenclaw, whose eagle-eyed intellect unravelled the most arcane puzzles, he pored over blueprints that Slytherin had subtly altered with illusion charms, parchments that showed only empty vaults and forgotten cellars. Hufflepuff's warmth fostered trust, blinding her to the cold calculations unfolding in isolation. She shared feasts and laughter, assuming their old friend's brooding was mere eccentricity. Slytherin's genius lay in misdirection. He layered the chamber with Fidelius-like veils, not bound to a secret keeper, but woven into the castle's own wards, which the founders had collectively cast. These amplified his personal spells, turning Hogwarts itself into an unwitting accomplice. The Basilisk's embryonic hisses were drowned by the castle's own groans, its magical aura masked as the ambient hum of the school's foundational charms. distracted by their own grand designs, Gryffindor's dueling arenas, Ravenclaw's starry observatories, they poured their magic outward, leaving the depths unprobed. Slytherin exploited their unity against them, his Parseltongue incantations resonating on frequencies none but he could hear, a symphony of shadow amid their light. Trust eroded slowly at first, then catastrophically. Debates in the Headmaster's nascent office turned to shouts, echoing through torchlit halls. Slytherin accused his peers of dooming wizardkind to dilution, while they decried his paranoia as poison. Whispers spread among house elves and early staff. Had Slytherin vanished into the fens one dawn around the turn of the millennium, slipping away under cover of mist? Or was it a forced coup, the others uniting to drive him out after glimpsing traces of his serpentine workings? Gryffindor's wand hand twitched toward confrontation. Ravenclaw's logic pieced together inconsistencies in his absences. Hufflepuff pleaded for reconciliation, even as her heart hardened. No records survive of violence, no scorched stones or cursed heirlooms. But the absence speaks volumes. Slytherin's portrait never graced the office, his house's common room sealed with a wall that wept slime. Voluntary exile paints him as a principled zealot, departing to safeguard his vision elsewhere. A coup suggests betrayal among brothers in arms, the founders masking their ousting with tales of irreconcilable ideals to preserve the school's fragile birth. The truth lingers in the castle stones, where faint Parseltongue echoes still shiver the air on moonless nights. The chamber slept, its cradle undisturbed, as generations of students walked oblivious above the slumbering horror. Slytherin's shadow stretched long, a blueprint for division that would fracture Hogwarts time and again. But what unfolded in the 1,000-year silence after his exit, when the castle held its breath and the Basilisk dreamed of blood? That's the enigma we'll unravel next in Chapter 4, the 1,000-year silence, where forgotten whispers from the depths threaten to rewrite everything you thought you knew. Even after Slytherin's departure, with the Chamber of Secrets sealed away beneath the castle's foundations, his venom seeped into the very stones of Hogwarts. The other founders might have scrubbed his name from the official annals, but they couldn't erase the fracture he'd carved into the school's soul. What followed was a 1,000-year silence on the surface, a fragile peace where the castle hummed with lessons and laughter. But beneath it, echoes of pure-blood fervour lingered like mist in the dungeons. You can almost feel it in those early medieval corridors, the chill draft carrying whispers from Slytherin's era. Tracing the earliest records of blood status discrimination takes us back to the 11th and 12th centuries, when Hogwarts ledgers first show subtle biases creeping in. Scribes in the headmaster's office noted incidents with Muggle-born students, mysterious hexes that left them bedridden, portraits muttering slurs when no one watched. One parchment from around 1092 describes a first year from a Muggle family who vanished during a full moon, only for his robes to wash up in the Black Lake, torn and blooded. The official verdict, a simple drowning, but the house elves whispered otherwise, tails twitching as they cleaned the Slytherin common room that night. These weren't isolated pranks. By the 13th century, under Headmaster Edric the Ever-Vigilant, who ruled from 1227 to 1254, curriculum notes reveal segregated potion brewing sessions. Pure Bloods handled rare ingredients from family vaults, while Muggle-borns stirred basic drafts with second-hand cauldrons. Edric's own diary, preserved in the restricted section, confesses his unease. The founder's words haunt my dreams. What if the unworthy dilute our magic? He never named Slytherin outright, but the fear was there, a shadow puppeteering decisions from afar. Slytherin's influence survived through the centuries, not through decrees or dark artifacts alone, but through the enduring culture of Slytherin House itself. The emerald-lit dungeon lair, with its leather-bound tomes on bloodlines and silver serpents, coiled around every torch bracket, became a breeding ground for his ideals. Ambitious students flocked there, drawn by the house's creed of cunning and resourcefulness. But many twisted it into something sharper, a quiet supremacy. Generations of Slytherins passed down family grimoires filled with essays on magical dilution, arguing that Muggle blood weakened spells like rust on iron. Common room debates turned venomous after curfew, voices low as they plotted to protect the lineage. Even professors turned a blind eye. A Slytherin head of house in the 14th century, one Isolde Vance, openly favoured her own in-house points, docking Gryffindors for impure alliances during inter-house tournaments. This culture wasn't confined to four walls. It bled into the Great Hall, where Slytherin tables buzzed with gossip about mudblood mishaps, and into Quidditch pitches, where beaters aimed low at non-pure opponents. By the 15th century, under Headmaster Baldwin the Bold, from 1423 to 1461, the school's first formal blood registry appeared. Students declared their heritage upon sorting, and Muggle-borns wore subtle silver pins, easy targets for jinxes. Baldwin justified it as safeguarding traditions, but his portrait later admitted in confidence to successors that it stemmed from nightmares of a serpent stirring below. And then there was the myth of the hair, a spectre that haunted every subsequent headmaster like a curse they couldn't lift. Slytherin had vanished around the year 1000, leaving behind prophecies scratched into ancient runes. The hair shall rise when the unworthy overrun the halls, unleashing judgment from the depths. Headmasters pored over these fragments in the dim glow of the office portraits. Their predecessors' painted eyes, narrowing in suspicion, was every petrified student a sign, every unexplained illness. In 1284, Headmaster Emeric, the enigmatic, woke screaming from visions of green scales, ordering endless searches of the plumbing. Years before modern pipes even existed, he expelled 3 Muggle-borns on flimsy evidence, only for the ministry to reinstate them amid scandal. This dread pulsed through the centuries. In the 16th century, during the reign of Headmaster Dilys Derwent, from 1722 to 1741, no, wait. Earlier, actually. Her time was later. But contemporaries like Electo Blackthorn in 1599 barricaded the dungeons. Convinced the Hare walked among them as a 7th-year prefect, portraits chronicled the toll. Grey hairs sprouting overnight, hands trembling over the sorting hat. One headmaster, Gervase the Grim, in 1492, resigned after a voice in the walls hissed Parseltongue during assembly. Those skeptics called it wind through the stones. Yet the myth endured, a psychological chain binding leaders to Slytherin's grudge. They tightened admissions, favoured old families, all while denying the founder's ghost pulled the strings. Imagine the weight of it in those candlelit offices, the air thick with phoenix ash and regret. Headmaster after headmaster stared into the flow, hoping for guidance from long-dead founders, only to hear Slytherin's painted likeness sneer from the frame. Though officially, his portrait was never hung. The silence stretched a millennium, broken only by faint hisses in the walls, rumours of heirs in every ambitious face. Slytherin House thrived, its alumni rising to Wizengamot seats, whispering policies that echoed the chamber's purpose. Medieval discrimination evolved into Victorian snobbery, setting the stage for headmasters who wore prejudice like a badge. By the late 19th century, that 1000-year hush cracked wide open. Enter Phineas Nigellus Black, the Victorian tyrant whose reign will unravel in Chapter 5. What made him the most despised headmaster in Hogwarts history? Banning Quidditch over a purebloods bruise and sneering at anyone with Muggle dust on their robes. Stay with me as we descend into his era. You won't want to miss how his Slytherin legacy turned the castle into a powder keg, as the shadow of Slytherin's heir lingered in whispers through the corridors. Generation after generation of headmasters felt its chill, a reminder that pureblood fervour never truly faded from Hogwarts stones. By the 19th century, that ideology found its most iron-fisted champion in the Black family, whose notorious patriarch ascended to the headmaster's throne. transforming the school into a bastion of unyielding elitism. Phineas Nigellus Black didn't merely lead Hogwarts. He ruled it like a Victorian monarch over his domain. Born into the ancient Black lineage, steeped in the family's mantra of blood purity, he took the helm in the latter half of the 1800s, holding power until 1925. Picture the castle then. Gas lamps flickering along walls, heavy with the scent of polished oak and aged parchment. The air thick with the rustle of starched robes and the distant clatter of house elves scurrying in submission. Phineas, with his sharp features and perpetual scowl, much like the portrait that would later sneer from the headmaster's office, embodied the era's rigid hierarchies, where wizarding society mirrored the Muggle world's industrial divides, but amplified through wands and ancient grudges. He arrived at a time when Hogwarts was swelling with students from old families, their trunks emblazoned with crests of serpents and lions. Yet the winds of change from the Muggle world crept in, steam engines chugging beyond Hogsmeade, whispers of reform and equality that no pure-blood patriarch could stomach. Phineas Nigellus saw Muggle-borns not as equals, but as interlopers diluting the sacred bloodlines, their very presence an affront to the castle's legacy. Teachers under his watch walked on eggshells, prefects patrolled with an air of smug entitlement, and the great hall echoed with debates that always circled back to lineage, as if every spell cast depended on the purity of one's veins. What set him apart, what made Phineas Nigellus Black statistically the most loathed figure in the school's history, wasn't just his words. It was his deeds, etched into student memories like curses. Sirius Black himself, his great-great-grandson, dismissed him as the worst headmaster ever, a verdict echoed in surveys of alumni recollections and even in the disdainful murmurs of his own portrait. Phineas didn't hide his contempt. He wielded it like a wand. He lectured from the head table on the virtues of true wizarding stock, dismissing Muggle studies as beneath notice and praising houses that upheld tradition above all. Gryffindors chafed under his favoritism towards Slytherin, where ambition flowed unchecked, while Ravenclaws and Hufflepuffs found their innovations stifled by his decrees. The cultural shift of Hogwarts, during the height of pure-blood elitism, crystallized under his reign, turning the school from a place of wonder into a stratified enclave. Quidditch pitches, once alive with the roar of brooms slicing through Highland mist, became symbols of his tyranny. Classes emphasized defensive magics laced with prejudice, potions brewed to preserve heritage, and history lessons that glorified figures like Salazar while glossing over the founder's fractures. Students from mixed backgrounds huddled in corners, their wands gripped tighter, as Phineas's policies fostered an atmosphere where a slip of Muggle in conversation could earn detention in the dungeons, the chill seeping into bones like Dementor fog. Yet Phineas saw himself as the guardian of Hogwarts' soul, penning essays in wizarding journals to cry bird in the dilution of magic, his quill scratching judgments that would outlive him. His wife, Ursula Flint, shared his views, their union a pure-blood alliance that produced heirs to carry the torch. Even in death, his portrait retained that bite, snapping at successors, defending his era's cruelties with a haughty, "One must maintain standards after all." Staff meetings dragged under his gate, portraits of past headmasters shifting uncomfortably in their frames, the office's magic humming with tension, as if the castle itself disapproved. This was no fleeting storm. Phineas' nearly 5-decade tenure embedded pure-blood elitism so deeply that it influenced curricula for generations, Slytherin house swelling with pride, while others navigated suspicion. Whispers of his unfair detentions filled common rooms late into the night, broomsticks grounded not for safety, but for politics. He banned gatherings that smelled of Muggle sympathy, his owls delivering edicts that landed like bludgers. And through it all, Hogwarts endured, its towers standing sentinel over a divided wizarding world, the headmaster's chair a precarious perch between tradition and the creeping tide of progress. But beneath the surface of Phineas's iron rule, simmered a specific flashpoint, a crisis in 1890 that would expose the fractures in his regime like never before. In the next chapter, the 1890 crisis, we'll plunge into the heart of that turmoil. The Quidditch catastrophe that ignited outrage and revealed just how far one headmaster would go to protect pureblood pride at any cost. As the 19th century wore on, Phineas Nicholas Black's grip on Hogwarts tightened like a noose around the school's spirit, but nothing etched his name deeper into the stone walls than the crisis of 1890. That year, whispers of rebellion echoed from the goblin mines beneath the Scottish Highlands, igniting a firestorm that tested every corner of the wizarding world and exposed the headmaster's true mettle. Picture the castle in late autumn, leaves swirling like omens across the Black Lake, when Ranrock, the fierce goblin leader, declared open war on wizardkind. Long simmering under centuries of subjugation, goblinkind had endured broken promises and shattered artifacts, their forges cold while wizard vaults brimmed with stolen magic. Ranrock, scarred and unyielding, rallied his kin with visions of reclaimed power, allying with shadowy dark wizards who saw opportunity in the chaos. Raids struck Hogsmeade first, shops ablaze, villagers fleeing as goblin axes cleave through charmed doors. The air reeked of smoke and molten iron, screams mingling with the clash of steel on spellwork. Hogwarts stood as the bulwark, its wards humming with ancient defences, yet the threat burrowed deeper. A new fifth-year student arrived amid the turmoil, marked by a rare gift for ancient magic, thrust into trials that peeled back the castle's veiled history. Professors scrambled, Eleazar Fig unravelling forbidden repositories, Matilda Weasley fortifying the greenhouses against poacher incursions, Ronan Everard drilling defence drills in the shadowed halls. Goblins infiltrated the depths, seeking a power source, whispered in legends, the repository of ancient magic, capable of reshaping reality itself. Ranrock's forces unearthed trials long buried, from flooded caves pulsing with spectral guardians to spider-infested ruins where venom dripped like accusations. Battles erupted across the map, the Forbidden Forest alive with ashwinders and rankin infestations, poacher camps torched by dragonfire, and the heart of the rebellion in the mines where Ranrock's banner flew defiant. Dark wizards like Victor Rookwood peddled curses from coastal lairs, while Sebastian Sallow's forbidden experiments in the catacombs added unwitting fuel. The student, weaving through it all, confronted trials of fire and ice, earth and sky, each victory a step toward thwarting the repository's fall. Professors clashed in the headmaster's tower, strategies fracturing under pressure as the castle itself seemed to groan, portraits whispering warnings from bygone eras. Yet behind the ornate desk in the headmaster's office, Phineas Nicholas Black remained unmoved. While goblins hammered at the gates and students patrolled the battlements, he barricaded himself with ledgers and lectures, issuing edicts from afar. His refusal to lead wasn't mere oversight. It was cowardice cloaked in protocol. The headmaster's place is administration. He'd sneer, parchment shielding his view of the fray. Delegating to underlings, he watched from stained glass windows as Fig bore the burden. As Weasley mended the wounded, his own wand gathering dust, whispers spread through the houses. Slytherin revered his blood purity, but even they scorned his absence. Gryffindors muttered of desertion. Ravenclaws dissected his inaction in common room debates. Hufflepuffs mourned the lost unity. Phineas, descendant of Blacks, prioritised prestige over peril, his portrait-bound legacy already souring. In this powder keg, Phineas struck a blow that lingered like a curse, the banning of Quidditch. It came after a brutal match, a pure-blood Slytherin beater felled by a rogue bludger, perhaps tampered amid rising tensions. Broomsticks grounded, the pitches fell silent, stands empty under grey skies. No more roars from the crowds, no dives through golden hoops to lift sagging spirits. This wasn't safety. It was a calculated move to suppress student morale, chaining the school's heartbeat. Gryffindor captains fumed in empty locker rooms. Ravenclaw seekers traced phantom flight paths in the air. Hufflepuff chasers passed beaters' bats in futile drills. Quidditch had been the great equalizer, a whirlwind of house pride piercing the gloom, now stifled, leaving only the drumbeat of rebellion to fill the void. The crisis peaked in the castle's bowels, where Ranrock breached the repository, his form twisting under ancient power's corruption. A final confrontation amid glowing runes, bells shattering the air like thunder, ended his threat, but scars remained. Hogsmeade rebuilt slowly, goblin grudges festered underground and Hogwarts exhaled, wary. Phineas emerged unscathed, claiming credit in circular memos, his unpopularity calcifying into legend. Sirius Black would later brand him the least liked headmaster in history, a verdict etched in family tapestries. Through it all, Phineas's portrait watched from the office walls, eyes sharp with unspoken barbs, hinting at the spite that would define his eternal voice. In the next chapter, The Portrait Spite, you'll discover how his painted sneer haunted successors, twisting counsel into venom that nearly unraveled the school from within. What secrets did he hoard to wield such enduring malice? Phineas Nigellus Black clung to the headmaster's desk for decades after that chaotic 1890 crisis, his grip on power unyielding even as the wizarding world churned through wars and whispers of change. He ruled until around 1925, a shadow over Hogwarts that students and staff alike learned to navigate like a perpetual storm cloud in the Great Hall. But death didn't silence him. Far from it. When Phineas finally passed, his portrait joined the solemn lineup in the headmaster's office, those enchanted canvases where former leaders lingered, offering counsel, or in his case, cutting remarks, to whoever claimed the desk next. Those portraits aren't mere paintings. They're windows to the soul of Hogwarts past, alive with the quirks and grudges of their subjects. Phineas's likeness, stern in his high-collared robes, captured every ounce of his aristocratic sneer. He surveyed the office with those piercing eyes, critiquing successors from the walls, yet his influence stretched beyond stone and spellwork. A duplicate portrait hung in number 12, Grimmauld Place, the Black family home turned reluctant headquarters for the Order of the Phoenix. There in the dim glow of that cursed house, Phineas found a new purpose, one orchestrated by none other than Albus Dumbledore. Dumbledore, ever the strategist, saw value in the old Tyrants' connections. Phineas, bound by portrait magic to report back, became an unwitting spy. During the height of the Second Wizarding War, with Voldemort's shadow lengthening, Dumbledore tasked him with keeping tabs on young Harry Potter. The boy who lived, hidden away at Grimmauld Place over those tense summers, had no idea eyes from the past watched his every move. Phineas relayed snippets of conversations, movements in the house, even the formation of Dumbledore's army. When whispers reached the school, it was a reluctant alliance. Phineas loathed the mudbloods and half-breeds swarming what he saw as pure blood ground. But duty to Hogwarts, or perhaps a flicker of the greater good, kept his painted dung reporting faithfully. Picture Harry, frustrated and brooding in that musty drawing room, only to hear Phineas's voice rasped from the wall like gravel underfoot. Their exchanges crackled with tension, a clash of errors and ideals. Phineas never missed a chance to prod at Harry's nerves. When Harry vented about his occlumency lessons with Snape, the portrait scoffed, dismissing the boy's complaints as weakness. But it was Hermione Granger who drew his sharpest barbs. Mudblood. He'd spit, the word dripping with the venom of old prejudices, every time she entered the frame. Harry defended her fiercely once, snapping back that intelligence had no blood status. Phineas's painted face twisted in disgust, hissing that such notions polluted the sacred halls. Those moments revealed the depth of his disdain, not just casual bigotry, but a worldview forged in the fires of pure blood supremacy, where Muggle-borns were invaders tainting the castle's ancient and yet even in spite, Phineas served a purpose. His reports helped Dumbledore piece together threats, bridging the gap between the school's insulated world and the war raging outside. Harry, enduring the portrait's jabs, learned to tune out the spite, focusing on the fight ahead. It was a strange symbiosis. The least popular headmaster, reduced to a fly on the wall, aiding the very forces he'd have scorned in life. That disdain echoed the Black family's unyielding creed, etched into their very being. Toujours pur, always, weren't just words on a tapestry at Grimmauld Place. They lingered within Hogwarts school walls. Like a curse woven into the mortar, Phineas embodied it, his portrait a perpetual reminder of the purity obsession that had scarred Slytherin House from its founding. Students passing the headmaster's office might catch his mutterings, reinforcing the divide between bloodlines. Even after his era, the motto's shadow influenced house rivalries, whispered loyalties, and the subtle biases that made Gryffindors bristle and Slytherins nod in secret approval. It was the legacy of exclusion, painted large and unapologetic, ensuring Phineas's spite outlived his flesh. Through it all, the portrait watched Hogwarts evolve, a grumpy sentinel to the tides of change. His reports to Dumbledore during those dark years proved pivotal, feeding intelligence that shaped battles yet to come. But as one headmaster's shadow faded, another rose from the interwar haze, inheriting a school teetering on the edge of catastrophe. Up next in Chapter 8, the interwar era, Armando Dippet's rise. We'll uncover how this mild-mannered successor unwittingly presided over the darkest pupil ever to walk those halls, setting the stage for terror that would echo for generations. What secrets did Dippet overlook in the quiet years before the Basilisk stirred again? Stay with us. As Phineas Nigellus Black's painted eyes narrowed in perpetual judgment from his frame in the headmaster's office, the world beyond Hogwarts walls was shedding its corsets and gas lamps for something sharper, more electric. The Victorian era, with its rigid hierarchies and whispered scandals, gave way to the roar of the 1920s. A time when Muggle automobiles choked London streets, jazz spilled from hidden gramophones in Diagon Alley, and the wizarding world grappled with its own uneasy modernisation. Owlpost competed with experimental Flu networks, and the Ministry of Magic, freshly reorganised after the International Statute of Secrecy, pushed for stricter secrecy laws to counter the chaos of a post-war Muggle society. Hogwarts itself felt the shift. The castle's ancient stones seemed to hum with the tension of old bloodlines clashing against new ideas. As students arrived on the Hogwarts Express, with tales of flying Muggle contraptions and forbidden Muggle-born radios crackling under their robes. To this brewing storm stepped Armando Dippet, the man who would helm Hogwarts from around 1925 until sometime between 1965 and 1971. He inherited the headmaster's chair from Phineas Nigellus, not with fanfare, but with the quiet click of a ledger being balanced. Dippet was no fiery, pure-blood zealot like his predecessor. He was a bureaucrat at heart, a wizard whose life revolved around schedules etched in enchanted ink that never smudged. Picture him striding the corridors in robes of impeccable navy, his long white beard tucked neatly into his belt, a pocket watch chain glinting like a promise of punctuality. Order was his god, rules his scripture. He expanded the staff handbook to include decrees on everything, from the precise angle at which broomsticks must be stored in the Quidditch sheds, to the mandatory logging of every potion ingredient used in class, down to the last dried newt tail. Yet this devotion to structure blinded him, turning his gaze inward to parchment stacks, while shadows lengthened in the corners he refused to question. Dippet believed Hogwarts could be perfected through edicts alone, that every mischief, every anomaly, would be filed away under administrative anomaly and forgotten. He reorganised the library into colour-coded sections, enforced curfews with house elf patrols that ticked like metronomes, and even charmed the Great Hall's hourglasses to chime a warning 5 minutes before meals ended, lest a single crumb disrupt the kitchen elf's clean-up rotter. Students whispered that he slept with a rulebook under his pillow, dreaming of perfectly aligned house points, but in his quest for flawless order, he overlooked the fractures, the subtle prejudices lingering from Phineas's era, The way Slytherin common room murmurs grew bolder under the guise of tradition. It was under this regime that a young Albus Dumbledore returned to Hogwarts as a professor of transfiguration, his brilliant mind already sparking like a misfired spell, fresh from his own tumultuous youth, marked by tragedy and the first glimmers of his philosophical wanderings. Dumbledore stepped into Dippet's shadow in the early 1930s. The headmaster viewed him with a mix of admiration and suspicion. Here was a wizard who could turn a teacup into a tortoise with effortless flair, yet he chafed against the endless paperwork, questioning why a charm's intent couldn't supersede its documented procedure. Dippet assigned him the cramped office next to the staff room, its walls lined with filing cabinets that groaned under memos about uniform sock length. Above the ankle, no exceptions. Dumbledore, ever the gentle rebel, humoured his superior with polite nods during interminable meetings, for his lessons breathed life into the castle's rigidity. He'd transfigure desks into prancing goats mid-lecture, drawing gasps and giggles that echoed down halls patrolled by Dippet's prefects. Their dynamic played out in quiet tensions, Dippet summoning Dumbledore to discuss irregular attendance when a student lingered too long stargazing from the astronomy tower, or Dumbledore subtly advocating for looser rules on Muggle-born integration, only to be met with Dippet's firm precedent must prevail. The headmaster prized Dumbledore's talent, but clipped his wings with committees, endless subcommittees, on curriculum standardization, keeping the younger professor buried in forms while the castle's deeper currents swirled unchecked. Whispers from the Slytherin, dungeons about ancient heirlooms and forgotten chambers went unheeded, dismissed as youthful pranks in Dippet's ledger of incidents. Dumbledore watched, his blue eyes thoughtful, as his boss's obsession with order created blind spots vast enough to hide a dragon. Dippet's era stretched through the Great Depression's chill, when even wizarding galleons felt lighter in pockets, and into the uneasy peace before darker storms. He navigated ministry inspections with flawless audits, earning quiet nods from officials who valued his predictability amid rising Muggle unrest. The castle's greenhouses bloomed under regimented schedules, producing flawless fluxweed for potions that could cure any ailment listed in the approved formulary. Yet that very predictability bred complacency. When peculiar petrifications began rippling through the student body years later, Dippet's response was a flurry of new rules. No unsupervised pipe travel, he'd decree, oblivious to the serpentine truth slithering beneath. His expulsion of young Rubeus Hagrid, pinning the blame on an acromantula that was little more than a gentle giant, was the ultimate triumph of protocol over perception. Hagrid bundled out the gates with his belongings in a sack, while the real monster retreated into myth. Dippet's blindness extended to the staff, where Dumbledore's warnings about certain ambitious pupils fell on deaf ears, tuned only to the tick of regulations. The headmaster aged gracefully in his tower, surrounded by charmed hourglasses that measured time in perfect increments. But the wizarding world hurtled toward war, and Hogwarts simmered with secrets his rules couldn't contain. As the 1930s waned, a new student arrived whose charm masked a void colder than any dungeon draft. One whose arrival would test every edict Dippet held dear. That story unfolds in Chapter 9. The arrival of Tom Riddle, where a smooth-talking orphan steps off the train and begins unravelling the threads of order from within. Stay with us to see how one boy's smile hides the basilisk's hiss, as Armando Dippet's grip on Hogwarts tightened through those interwar years. His obsession with order masked a deeper vulnerability, a quiet yearning for the school to shine under his watch like a beacon of wizarding excellence. He craved the prestige of guiding the next generation flawlessly, polishing every tradition until it gleamed. But in 1938, everything shifted when the most dangerous student in history walked through the doors. Picture the crisp autumn air sweeping across the Scottish Highlands. The September, the castle's towers piercing a sky heavy with gathering clouds. 11-year-old Tom Marvolo Riddle stepped off the Hogwarts Express, his dark hair neatly combed, his eyes sharp and unreadable behind a polite smile. He wasn't just any orph from a London workhouse. He carried the blood of Slytherin's line, though no one knew it yet. The other first years chattered excitedly, clutching owls and trunks, but Riddle moved with a predator's grace, observing everything, cataloguing weaknesses. The Great Hall buzzed that evening as the Sorting Hat called his name. It barely touched his head before declaring Slytherin, the table erupting in applause from those emerald banners. Dippet watched from the head table, his long white beard framing a face etched with approval. This boy, with his flawless robes and articulate responses during the boat crossing, seemed the embodiment of what Hogwarts needed, a pure talent to elevate the school's reputation amid the Muggle world's growing unrest. From the start, Riddle understood Dippet's vanity like a spell waiting to be cast. The headmaster fancied himself a nurturer of greatness, often boasting in letters to the ministry about his unparalleled standards. Riddle fed that ego meticulously. By his second year, he was top of every class, charming professors with essays that quoted obscure texts they'd long forgotten. Slughorn later recalled how the boy lingered after potions, asking questions that made the old Slytherin feel like a genius reborn. Even staid McGonagall, in her early days as a teacher, found herself praising his transfiguration prowess, unaware of the chill in his gaze when he thought no one watched. Riddle orchestrated it all to become the model student Dippet paraded like a trophy. He volunteered for prefect duties before they were offered, organising study groups that mysteriously boosted house points for Slytherin. Dippet glowed during staff meetings, recounting how young Tom had helped a lost first year, or solved a riddle on a locked cabinet in the library that had stumped house elves for weeks. The headmaster's office walls seemed to echo with his pride. "A boy like that comes once in a generation," he'd say, ignoring the whispers from Hagrid. Then a burly third year about strange happenings near the Forbidden Forest. Those subtle signs of darkness flickered like shadows in torchlight, but Dippet chose to ignore them for the sake of prestige. First came the reports from the orphanage. Riddle had a history of making pets vanish, rabbits and birds turning up stiff and lifeless, their eyes wide with unspoken terror. He dismissed it as childish mishaps when questioned upon arrival. Then, animals around the castle began dying oddly. A fox found petrified by the lake, its fur unnaturally smooth. Owls dropping from the sky mid-flight. Hearts stopped without a mark. Caretaker staff murmured about a curse in the dungeons, but Dippet waved it off, chalking it up to natural causes or student pranks, unwilling to tarnish his star pupil's record. Even among peers, Riddle stood apart. He had no true friends, only followers drawn by his charisma, like a pale imitation of camaraderie. Avery and Lestrange, early devotees, trailed him like echoes, but he confided in no one, spending nights in the library poring over books on ancient magic, the kind that hinted at Horcruxes and heirs. Once, a Ravenclaw girl confronted him about a stolen heirloom from her family vault, traced to his trunk by a tracking charm. Yet it mysteriously reappeared before Dippet could investigate, leaving the headmaster to praise Riddle's honesty instead. Dippet's blindness deepened with each accolade. By 5th year, Riddle was a prefect, his badge gleaming as he enforced rules with a smile that never reached his eyes. Teachers adored him. Dumbledore alone sensed the void beneath, but even he lacked proof. Dippet, desperate for Hogwarts to outshine Bogsbuttons or Durmstrang in Ministry eyes, promoted Riddle relentlessly. Special permissions to the restricted section, invitations to tea, where the boy echoed the headmaster's views on pure blood traditions, just enough to flatter without overstepping. The castle itself seemed to whisper warnings. Portraits in the corridors shifted uneasily. When he passed, Phineas Nigellus Black's painted eyes narrowing from his frame, muttering about that slippery serpent. Yet Dippet, blinded by visions of headlines praising his tenure, Dippet discovers prodigy, pushed doubts aside. He offered Riddle a teaching post straight after graduation, a decision born of vanity that would haunt Hogwarts forever. Those ignored shadows grew longer each term. Riddle's experiments in hidden corners leaving traces of malice. A house elf found drained in the kitchens, chalked up to overwork. Whispers of spells that twisted minds. Practiced on unwitting muggle-borns in Hogsmeade. Dippet saw only the polished facade, the essays flawless, the Quidditch commentary insightful from the stands. Prestige demanded perfection, and Riddle delivered it, wrapped in deception. By 1942, as war raged beyond the wards, Riddle's influence permeated Slytherin like ink in water. He founded a club, the Knights of Walpurgis, disguised as a debate society, where pure-blood ideals festered unchecked. Dippet attended a meeting, beaming at the intellectual discourse, oblivious to the undercurrents of supremacy, echoing Slytherin's ghost. This perfect student, this harbinger of horror, had woven himself into the heart of Dippet's world. But beneath the awards and applause, the darkness simmered, waiting for its moment. And that moment arrived in 1943 with the first opening of the chamber, as we'll uncover in Chapter 10. What Riddle unleashed would shake Hogwarts to its foundations and expose every flaw in Dippet's ordered reign. By 1943, Tom Riddle's flawless mask, as the model student had held for 5 years, charming teachers and prefects alike under Armando Dippet's watchful eye. But beneath that polished surface, something far more sinister stirred in the castle's ancient stones. Whispers of a monster began to slither through the corridors, petrifying students who caught fleeting glimpses of yellow eyes in the shadows. Hogwarts, once a sanctuary of magic and wonder, felt the chill of true terror for the first time in generations. It started subtly, with roosters found dead in the early dawn light, their necks twisted unnaturally, as if silenced before they could crow. Students spoke in hushed tones about messages scrawled in blood on the walls, proclaiming that the Chamber of Secrets had been opened at last. Enemies of the air, beware. The air grew thick with fear, classes emptying, as parents demanded their children be sent home by Flow Network or Apparition Waiver. Dippet ever, the man of rigid order, paced his office, his long fingers steepled, poring over ancient tomes for answers that wouldn't come. Then came the tragedy that shattered the fragile calm, the death of moaning Myrtle, and the panic that nearly closed Hogwarts forever. Myrtle Warren, a plain but spirited fifth-year Muggle-born, had slipped into a girl's bathroom on the first floor one rainy afternoon, seeking solace from the taunts of Olive Hornby. As she sobbed over the sink, a force beyond comprehension struck from the pipes below. Her body crumpled lifeless to the blood-slicked tiles, eyes wide in eternal shock, killed instantly by the Basilisk's deadly gaze reflected in the water. Word spread like fiendfire. Girls screamed in the dormitories, boys barricaded common room doors, and even the ghosts seemed to fade into the walls, unwilling to witness the horror. The castle transformed overnight. Moaning Myrtle's spirit returned that very night, wailing through the plumbing, her cries echoing like a siren's lament, driving prefects to madness. Parents flooded the ministry with owls, demanding the school's immediate shutdown. Governors convened in emergency session, their faces gaunt under the strain. Dippet stood before them in the great hall, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying the weight of it all. He issued his ultimatum: find a culprit or lose the school. Hogwarts teetered on the brink, its 1,000-year legacy hanging by a thread. Closure would mean scattering the staff, auctioning the artifacts, and erasing the magic from those hallowed halls forever. Panic gripped every corner. Slytherin students huddled in their dungeons, whispering about Salazar's heir fulfilling an ancient prophecy. Gryffindors patrolled the corridors with wands drawn, while Hufflepuffs brewed endless calming draughts that did little to soothe frayed nerves. Ravenclaws buried themselves in the library, cross-referencing Basilisk lore with plumbing charts, desperate for a clue. Dippet doubled the Auror presence, their dark robes stark against the castle's warm glow, but even they flinched at the distant hiss that slithered through the vents at night. Meals in the Great Hall fell silent, save for the clink of forks and the occasional sob. The house elves wept in the kitchens, refusing to polish silver that might never gleam again. Amid this chaos, eyes turned suspiciously toward the unusual, the outcast. Rubeus Hagrid, that gentle half-giant third year, with a heart as big as his frame, kept to himself, tending his secret menagerie in the forbidden forest's edge. His love for creatures ran deep. Spiders, acromantulas, even the rarest beasts found solace under his care. But in the fever of fear, whispers twisted into accusations. Someone had seen a massive spider skittering near the crime scene, they claimed. Hagrid's pet, Aragog, barely hatched, became the scapegoat in a web of lies spun by a far darker hand. Tom Riddle watched it all unfold with calculated poise, his prefect badge glinting as he volunteered to lead investigations, all while ensuring the trails led away from him. He cornered Hagrid one misty evening by the lake, his voice smooth as serpent skin, planting seeds of doubt that bloomed into catastrophe. The boy who would become Lord Voldemort framed his innocent classmate with ruthless precision, turning Hagrid's passion into proof of guilt. Dippet, desperate for resolution, seized on the lead. The tragedy of Rubeus Hagrid, an innocent boy framed by a future Dark Lord. Expulsion loomed, a life shattered on the altar of panic, all to protect the true monster's secret. As the Basilisk slumbered once more, sealed away by Riddle's own hand to avert disaster, the school exhaled, but scars lingered deep. Myrtle's ghost haunted those pipes eternally, a spectral reminder of unchecked terror. Dippet's reign, meant to embody order, now bore the stain of hasty justice. And in the shadows, a 16-year-old orphan plotted greater darkness, his eyes fixed on immortality. But the full fallout from that fateful spring, the expulsion that changed a life forever, and the cover-up that buried the truth for decades, waits in Chapter 11. The expulsion, the cover-up. What secrets did Dippet overlook, and how did they echo through the years? Stay with me to uncover it all. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. With Dippet's ultimatum hanging over Hogwarts like a storm cloud ready to burst, the search for a culprit intensified, turning the castle's ancient stones into a labyrinth of suspicion and whispered accusations. Students huddled in common rooms, professors patrolled corridors with wands drawn, and the air grew thick with the scent of fear sweet and flickering torchlight. Yet in the midst of this chaos, Tom Riddle emerged not as a suspect, but as the golden boy who handed his headmaster the perfect solution on a silver platter. Riddle, ever the charmer, approached Dippet's office. Late one evening, his prefect's badge gleaming under the enchanted ceiling that mimicked a starry night, he claimed to have uncovered the source of the terror. A third-year student named Rubeus Hagrid, whose massive frame and fondness for forbidden creatures made him an easy target. Hagrid had been experimenting with a peculiar acromantula egg in a hidden chamber of the dungeons, Riddle insisted, and that monstrous spider was behind the petrifications, and perhaps even the murder of Myrtle. It was a tale woven with just enough truth to ensnare a man like Dippet, who craved order above all else. You see, Dippet was so quick to believe Riddle over the evidence, because Riddle played straight into his deepest vanities and blind spots. The headmaster, in his late 60s by then, with silver threading his hair and a penchant for star charts, saw in Riddle the embodiment of everything he valued. A brilliant, pure-blood orphan who embodied discipline and potential. Riddle's flawless record, top marks, prefect duties, no blemish, contrasted sharply with Hagrid's rough edges, his half-giant heritage whispered about in staff meetings, and his careless spells that often backfired spectacularly. Evidence. There was scant proof beyond a broken wand tip found near the scene, but Dippet dismissed deeper inquiries. The Board of Governors was breathing down his neck, parents clamouring for closure, and closure Riddle provided, neatly wrapped, To question the boy would mean admitting Hogwarts had nurtured a monster under its roof. Far easier to pin it on the expendable groundskeeper's son. The expulsion came swiftly, a spectacle that scarred the castle's memory. Hagrid was dragged before the staff assembly in the Great Hall, his broad shoulders slumped, eyes wide with betrayal. Dippet, perched at the head table like a judge on a throne, snapped Hagrid's wand in two, with a crack that echoed like thunder. Pinkwood shards scattered across the flagstones, their magic fizzling out in acrid smoke. Hagrid begged, voice booming through tears, but Dippet's gaze was steel. He was safeguarding the school, or so he told himself. Expelled on the spot, Hagrid stumbled into the night, forbidden from magic, his dreams of wizardry shattered. The chamber's true horror was buried. Riddle slithered back to Slytherin dorms, his secret intact. Those long-term consequences of Hagrid's broken wand and ruined reputation rippled through decades like a curse that wouldn't lift. Denied a proper education, Hagrid scraped by as gamekeeper, his immense strength and gentle heart twisted into a life of menial labour. Knowles, no news, just a lifetime ban on wand use that left him vulnerable, isolated, forever the oaf, in the eyes of those who judge by blood or polish. His reputation as the monster maker clung like damp rot. Whispers followed him through Hogsmeade taverns and Diagon Alley stalls, barring him from jobs, friendships, even simple respect. Yet, in that shadow, Hagrid forged unbreakable loyalties, teaching Harry Potter the meaning of true magic, fostering creatures others feared, becoming the heart Hogwarts desperately needed. But the cost was etched in every limping step he took, every longing glance at a wand he could never wield again. Dippet, meanwhile, washed his hands of the affair, declaring the crisis averted. The petrifications ceased. Riddle had ensured the Basilisk slumbered once more, and life at Hogwarts resumed its rhythm of classes and feasts. No one dug deeper. The evidence Riddle fabricated held just long enough. Dippet clung to his post for decades more, overseeing the post-war boom, watching Dumbledore rise through the ranks. But cracks formed in his legacy. Whispers among alumni questioned the haste, the overlooked clues, like the inconsistencies in Myrtle's final moments, or Hagrid's tearful innocence. As the years wore on, Dippet's grip loosened. By the late 1960s, well into his 90s, his once sharp mind wandered through memories of eclipses and ancient prophecies. He retired quietly around 1971, slipping away to a modest cottage in the Highlands, surrounded by stargazing telescopes and dusty tomes. No fanfare, no gala in the Great Hall. Just a portrait hung in the office, his painted eyes forever watchful, a silent witness to the monster he had enabled. Riddle graduated with honours, vanished into shadows, and Dippet faded into obscurity, his enabling hand in Voldemort's origin story buried beneath layers of denial. That quiet exit raises shadows that stretch far beyond Hogwarts walls, into the corridors of power where true accountability hides. In the next chapter, The Ministry's Long Shadow, we'll uncover how governmental meddling twisted the school's fate even further, pulling strings that Dippet could only dream of resisting. What dark alliances formed in those halls? And how did they echo through the wizarding world? Stay with me as the intrigue deepens. Decades after Armando Dippet snapped Hagrid's wand and shattered his future, the echoes of that injustice faded into the corridors of time, only for Hogwarts to face a far more insidious threat. By the 1990s, the wizarding world simmered under a fragile peace, Voldemort's shadow still haunting the edges of every headline in the Daily Prophet. You could feel it in the air of Diagon Alley, that tense hush where shopkeepers whispered about disappearances and families double-checked their flow powder stocks. The Ministry of Magic, once a beacon against Grindelwald's terror, now clung to denial like a drowning man to driftwood. Cornelius Fudge, the Minister for Magic since 1985, embodied that denial. Picture him in his pinstriped robes, bow tie slightly askew, striding through the atrium with that perpetual sheen of forced optimism. At first, it was understandable. Voldemort had vanished 13 years earlier, leaving scars but no sightings. Fudge poured galleons into public morale boosts, Azkaban upgrades, and feel-good decrees that painted Britain as unassailable. But as whispers grew, odd attacks on Muggles, the Triwizard Tournament's chaos in 1995, cracks appeared. Harry Potter's claims from the graveyard sent Fudge spiralling. He couldn't admit the Dark Lord's return. It would topple his career, expose Ministry failures. Instead, paranoia took root. Fudge convinced himself Dumbledore was the real threat, plotting a coup from Hogwarts towers. Smear campaigns filled the prophet. Dumbledore as a power-hungry recluse, Harry as an attention-seeking liar. Fudge's office became a warren of frantic memos, his nights fueled by fire whiskey, eyes darting at shadows that might whisper, "You know?" This dissent poisoned everything it touched, especially Hogwarts. Fudge saw the school not as a sanctuary, but a nest of rebellion. Dumbledore's influence there, his Order of the Phoenix gatherings, his tolerance for troublemakers, like Potter, fueled Fudge's nightmares. He needed control, a way to choke the Headmaster's autonomy without a direct assault. Enter the educational decrees, a barrage of parchment that slithered into Hogwarts like poison gas. Decree number 22 stripped Dumbledore of hiring and firing powers, handing them to the Ministry. 23 banned all student organisations without his explicit approval. 24 let him sack teachers on whim. You can almost hear the quills scratching in the staff room. Professors like McGonagall's lips thinning as freedoms eroded. Classes on defence became theoretical drudges. No practical spells, no hexes, just essays on goblin rebellions. Lupin's werewolf lessons suspended. Hagrid's creatures deemed too risky. It was systematic, you see. A velvet glove over an iron fist, dismantling academic freedom one clause at a time. Students huddled in the common rooms, trading furtive notes on real defence, while the castle's ancient stones seemed to groan under the weight of Salons. Fudge's masterstroke came with Educational Decree number 28, the appointment of a High Inquisitor. This wasn't just oversight, it was a foothold for invasion. The role empowered an outsider to inspect classes, grade teachers, and wield veto power over the curriculum, all under the pink banner of standards. Whispers in the Ministry corridors named Dolores Umbridge for the post, her toad-like smile hiding a relish for the task. She arrived at Hogwarts with Ministry clipboards and saccharine decrees, her office filling with frilly plates and cat plates that clinked ominously. Professors endured her simpering evaluations. Flickwick's charm lessons picked apart, Sinistra's astronomy reduced to Ministry-approved charts. It was the precursor to the coup, that Inquisitor's badge glinting like a warning flare. Dumbledore watched from his office, Fawkes trilling unease, knowing this shadow would soon engulf the Headmaster's chair itself. As Umbridge's influence swelled, tightening around Hogwarts' throat, the stage set for her full tyranny. The air grew thicker with enforced smiles and blood quills waiting in drawers. What happened when that pink plague declared herself headmistress? Turning the castle into a prison of platitudes. You'll hear every chilling detail in our next chapter. The Pink Dictatorship, Dolores Umbridge. By April 1996, the educational decrees had woven their web so tightly around Hogwarts that the castle itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable snap. Cornelius Fudge, his face twisted in denial about the return of you now, who could no longer tolerate Albus Dumbledore's quiet defiance. Whispers of Dumbledore's army had reached the Ministry's ears, that secret group of students training in real defence under Harry's guidance. Fudge saw conspiracy everywhere, and in his fevered mind, Dumbledore was the puppet master plotting against the government. Aurors burst through the castle doors. One stormy evening, their wands drawn, boots echoing off the stone floors like thunderclaps. Fudge himself led the charge, flanked by Ministry officials, demanding Dumbledore's arrest on charges of conspiring to overthrow the wizarding government. The old wizard stood calm in the great hall, his half-moon spectacles glinting under the floating candles. but the tension crackled like static in the air. Students huddled in their house tables, Slytherin smirking, Gryffindors gripping their forks like weapons. Dumbledore offered no resistance, only a twinkling eye that said he knew this was coming. With a casual flick of his wand, he vanished in a swirl of phoenix song and flame, leaving Fudge red-faced and sputtering. In that vacuum, Dolores Umbridge stepped forward, her toad-like smile widening as she proclaimed herself High Inquisitor turned Headmistress. The Ministry's hostile takeover was complete. A pink-tinted iron fist clamped around Hogwarts' throat. Decrees flew from her office like poisoned confetti, banning clubs, silencing teachers, rewriting the curriculum to parrot Ministry lies. The castle groaned under her rule. Even the moving staircases seemed to hitch when she approached, as if repelled by her saccharine perfume of treacle tart and bitterness. Umbridge's reign transformed the school into a parody of order, every corridor patrolled by her personal enforcers. She draped her office in fuchsia, platters of kitten plates staring down with unblinking eyes. But the headmaster's portrait gallery barred her entry, the frames slamming shut like judgmental mouths. Students whispered of her waddling gait, her high-pitched giggle that chilled the spine more than any banshee's wail. Teachers like McGonagall seethed in silence, their lessons gutted to feeble theory, while Peeves the poltergeist took unholy delight in her torment, dropping chandelier prisms on her head or filling her inkwells with glue. She didn't stop at decrees. Umbridge handpicked her inquisitorial squad from the Slytherin ranks, Draco Malfoy at the forefront, flanked by Pansy Parkinson, Blaise Zabini, and a dozen others eager for power. These badges-wearing prefects turned students against one another, snitching on whispers of resistance, dragging classmates to detention for a sideways glance. Friendships fractured overnight. A Hufflepuff betrayed a Ravenclaw over a borrowed quill. A Gryffindor overheard plotting in the owlery faced the squad's wands before dawn. The Great Hall buzzed with paranoia, eyes darting like cornered rats, every laugh suspect. Malfoy strutted the halls, his sneer sharper than ever, doling out punishments that made him feel invincible under Umbridge's approving gaze. What drove this woman, you might wonder, to squeeze the joy from a place built on wonder? Dolores Umbridge embodied the psychology of a bureaucrat who enjoys the infliction of pain, not through grand curses or dark rituals, but through the petty machinery of rules. She thrived on control, a simpering voice masking a sadistic gleam when a student squirmed. It wasn't rage that fueled her, it was delight, a secret thrill in watching defiance crumble under her quill's scratch. Born to a Ministry paper pusher father and a muggle mother she despised, Umbridge climbed the ranks by outlasting rivals, her hatred for anything chaotic or impure bubbling beneath frilly cardigans. Hogwarts became her playground, where power let her indulge that buried cruelty without consequence. Her decrees piled higher. No more Gryffindor Quidditch. After Fred and George Weasley's fireworks rebellion, no gatherings without her nod. Filch, that squat caretaker with a heart of wet cement, found new purpose oiling her door hinges and compiling lists of rule breakers. Even the house elves averted their eyes, their tea trays trembling as they passed her domain. Students carved her name into desks with furtive spells, but retaliation was swift. Detentions that left scars no healer could mend. The twins' exodus marked her first real crack. Amid a symphony of exploding swamps and portable swamps, fireworks spelling insults across the sky, Fred and George rocketed away on brooms, leaving chaos in their wake. Umbridge's face purpled, her wand slashing futilely at the fading trails. Yet the castle exhaled a spark of rebellion lit. Whispers of Dumbledore's army grew bolder, Harry's visions pulling them toward greater dangers. Her grip tightened, but the walls whispered back. Portraits rolled their eyes at her demands for advice. Peeves composed filthy limericks in her honour. McGonagall's clipped retorts barely masked her fury, while Sprout and Flitwick bent rules in quiet ways. Herbs that caused mild itches in inquisitorial robes, charms that muddled squad patrols. Umbridge sensed the undercurrent. her detentions filling the evenings with muffled sobs. By late May, the air hummed with unrest. Harry's pleas to the Ministry fell on deaf ears, but cracks spiderwebbed her facade. Grawp's rampage in the Forbidden Forest, the Centaur's arrows, a moan she ignored in her delusion of victory. The school's magic rebelled subtly, suits of armour creaking to life at her approach, owls dropping dung on her windowsill. When the end came on June 18th, it was poetic. Ministry officials hauled her from the castle amid student cheers, her hems muddied, her toad eyes bulging in outrage. Hogwarts had endured, scarred but unbroken, the headmaster's chair empty once more. But before we leave her shadow, there's one tool of her tyranny that cut deeper than any decree. The quill of blood, a nightmare that turned words into wounds. In our next chapter, we'll uncover its horrors and how it broke even the strongest spirits, with the inquisitorial squad patrolling the corridors like shadows, sniffing out any whisper of defiance. Dolores Umbridge wasted no time in unveiling her true weapon of control. A detention system designed not just to punish, but to scar the soul. You can almost feel the chill of those evenings in her office, the air thick with the sickly sweet scent of her floral perfume, mingling with fresh ink and something sharper, metallic. Lines of students, heads bowed, would file in after curfew, their hands trembling as she handed out her special quill, that slender black instrument that looked so ordinary at first glance. She called it educational, of course, a tool to instill proper values. But from the moment the nib touched parchment, it revealed its horror. No inkwell needed. It drew from the writer's own blood. Harry Potter learned that the hard way, sentenced to detention for daring to speak truth to her toad-like face. Night after night, he'd sit there under her simpering gaze, forced to write, "I must not tell lies," over and over. Each stroke sliced into his skin, the words carving themselves into the back of his hand like a curse etched in flesh. The pain burned like fire, welts rising red and raw, only to heal just enough for the next session to reopen them. By the end, faint silvery scars lingered, a permanent reminder that defiance had a price. This was no mere slap on the wrist. Umbridge had decreed the return of corporal punishment to Hogwarts, banned for decades under kinder heads. Educational Decree No. 22 made it official. Teachers could now use physical means to enforce discipline, but Umbridge reserved the worst for herself. That quill became her signature, handed to prefects in the inquisitorial squad to wield on lesser offenders. Cho Chang bore those words too. After spilling secrets under pressure, Seamus Finnegan's hands blistered for questioning ministry lies. Even first years weren't spared if caught out of bounds. The castle's stones seemed to absorb the muffled cries, the drip of blood staining countless rolls of parchment that she collected like trophies. Filing them away in her pink-curtained lair, whispers spread through Gryffindor Tower like smoke from a dying fire. Students compared scars in the dead of night, hands bandaged under sleeves, vowing silence but seething inside. Professors like McGonagall watched with jaws clenched, forbidden by decree from intervening. Umbridge's reign echoed the chill precision of real-world authoritarian regimes. Those iron-fisted governments that crushed dissent not with armies alone, but with intimate tortures meant to break the spirit. Think of the Soviet gulags, where prisoners etched confessions into frozen earth with bleeding fingers, or the Inquisitions of old Europe, where heretics scrawled recantations amid racks and thumbscrews. Umbridge's quill was her rack, small scale but no less cruel, turning education into indoctrination, truth into treason. She mirrored them all. The smiling propagandist who dangled sweets while plotting pain, the bureaucrat who buried screams under stacks of pink paper, demanding loyalty oaths that cut deeper than any blade. Her overreach grew bolder with every drop of blood spilled. Emboldened, she marched to claim the headmaster's office atop the castle's highest tower, key in hand, expecting the door to bow to her title. But Hogwarts had other ideas. The heavy oak portal, carved with centuries of wisdom and wards tied to true leadership, simply refused her. No spells could force it, no decree pried it ajar. Inside, the portraits of past headmasters stirred in their frames, Phineas Nigellus Black sneering loudest, Armando Dippet muttering refusals, even Dilys Derwent turning her painted face away in disgust. The castle itself rebelled, loyal to Dumbledore's long shadow, its magic woven from the founder's intent, to protect the pure pursuit of knowledge, not this perversion. Gargoyles on the stairs shifted just out of reach, staircases twisted away mid-step. Umbridge pounded futilely, her high-pitched fury echoing unanswered, reduced to ranting at a locked door, whilst the school whispered her humiliation. Week by week, her grip slipped as resentment festered into something explosive. Students stopped flinching at detentions. They started plotting in earnest. The air hummed with unspoken rebellion, fireworks crackling in hidden pockets, swampy corridors bubbling underfoot. Umbridge's pink plague couldn't hold forever against a school alive with magic's wild heart. But the spark that would finally ignite it all comes next in Chapter 15, The Weasley Rebellion. What happens when two red-haired pranksters turn the castle into their personal war zone? You won't want to miss how they brought her empire crashing down, as the lines etched by Umbridge's blood quill carved deeper into hands like Harry's. A quiet fury simmered among the students, mirroring the unyielding resistance seen in those real-world regimes where cruelty only fueled the flames of rebellion. Whispers turned to plots in the shadowed corners of the Gryffindor common room, where Fred and George Weasley, those irrepressible twins with mischief woven into their very souls, saw their chance to strike back. You can almost hear the creak of the dormitory stairs late at night, the flicker of wand light, as they huddled over sketches of fireworks that glowed like captured stars. Umbridge's decrees had clamped down on every joy. Banned clubs, silenced teachers, turned the castle into a prison of parchment and pink. But Fred and George, with their shop in Hogsmeade already buzzing from Weasley's wizard wheezes, refused to bow. They tested the waters first with small acts, portable swamps bubbling up in corridors, homework that wrote itself in insults, decoy detonators scuttling like mechanical rats under inquisitorial squad desks. The twins' pranks grew bolder, each one a spark against the Ministry's iron grip. Imagine the Great Hall filling with a stench no spell could banish, or suits of armour belting out bawdy limericks mid-patrol. Umbridge fumed, a toad-like face purpling as she issued Decree No. 24, authorising the inquisitorial squad to enforce her will with Filch's glee. Yet every hex they dodged only emboldened the Weasleys, their laughter a defiant echo that rippled through house tables, drawing sly grins from Slytherins who secretly admired the chaos. It all built to that fateful day in May, when the air in Hogwarts hummed with anticipation. Fred and George had been planning their masterstroke for weeks, stockpiling fireworks from their Diagon Alley dreams. Dragons that roared emerald fire, rockets spelling out hem hem in exploding script, as Umbridge droned through a particularly vile history of magic lesson. Twisting facts into Ministry propaganda, the twins rose in the back of the class. With a casual flick of their wands, the windows shattered inward, and the sky above the castle erupted. Broomsticks shot from the Gryffindor tower, Fred and George soaring like phoenixes amid a storm of pyrotechnics. A colossal W formed in silver fireworks, twisting into serpents that chased inquisitorial squad members through the halls. Portable swamps expanded to engulf entire floors, forcing professors to wade knee-deep in enchanted muck. The castle trembled as a 100-foot-tall phoenix burst from the grounds, its song drowning out Umbridge's screams. Students poured from classrooms, cheering as the twins looped the towers, their voices booming, amplified by sonorous, "Give her hell from us, Peeves." This was the breaking point. Fred and George's legendary departure as a symbol of resistance. They didn't just prank, they liberated. As they banked toward Hogsmeade, coins rained from their pockets, a final gift to the school they'd outgrown. "We're not going to come back, in case you're looking for us," Fred called. "But we wouldn't miss this for the world," George added. "Besides, we'd already rather be in one of our own shops." Umbridge could seize the school, but she couldn't touch their spirit. The students watched them vanish into the horizon, brooms trailing sparks, knowing Hogwarts had won a victory no decree could undo. Peeves, that poltergeist nightmare Umbridge loathed, sealed their triumph by serenading her with a jingle, mocking her every quirk baton in hand as if conducting the rebellion itself. The castle seemed to breathe freer that day, corridors alive with laughter that no inquisitorial patrol could silence. Umbridge raged through the debris, her jammy thumb quivering, but the damage was done. She'd cracked the facade of control, exposed how fragile her tyranny truly was. This failure of Umbridge to control the spirit of Hogwarts cut deepest. The castle, with its moving staircases and whispering portraits, had always rebelled against the unworthy. Gryffindors smuggled dung bombs, Ravenclaws whispered counterspells, even Hufflepuffs hid contraband sweets. Teachers like McGonagall bit back retorts that nearly cost their jobs, while Flitwick's eyes twinkled over suppressed wand flicks. Umbridge's office door stayed sealed against her, the gargoyle loyal only to true headmasters. She prowled the halls, toad eyes bulging, but the ancient magic of the place mocked her every step, ghosts snickering, house elves vanishing with sly nods. Her desperation peaked with the inquisitorial squad's iron-fisted searches, dragging students like Ginny and Luna to her lair for interviews. Yet resistance festered. Harry and the DA remnants plotted in secret, their stunning spells primed. Umbridge, sensing the tide turn, sought forbidden knowledge, dragging Harry to the Forbidden Forest under pretense of questioning Hagrid. Deep in those twisted trees, where centaurs' hooves thudded like war drums and Acromanculus lurked unseen, her short-lived tyranny met its violent end. Hagrid, fresh from a mission and battered but unbroken, tried to warn her off, but Umbridge, wand raised and decrees forgotten, insulted the forest's guardians one insult too far. Filthy half-breeds, she spat at the centaurs who emerged like shadows given form. Banzo, Megorian, their bows drawn and eyes burning with ancient grudge. In a blur of arrows and hooves, they seized her, her screams swallowed by the canopy as they carried her into the gloom. Harry watched, stunned, as Hermione's quick lie about Grawp saved the day, the half-giant's roars scattering the chaos. Umbridge returned days later, shaken and silenced, her pink robes muddied, never quite the same. The centaurs had spared her life, but stripped her arrogance bare, a humiliating banishment that echoed through the school like victory bells. Hogwarts exhaled. The Weasley rebellion had ignited what no decree could extinguish, proving that even in her darkest hour, the school's heart beat wild and free. Umbridge clung to power mere weeks longer, her grip slipping like wet parchment. But the story doesn't end there. Whispers from the Astronomy Tower would soon plunge Hogwarts into even greater shadow, as loyalties shatter and a single night's betrayal changes everything forever. Stay with me for Chapter 16, The Astronomy Tower Aftermath. Umbridge's grip shattered like a poorly aimed hex. Thanks to that unyielding spirit of Hogwarts, pulsing through every stone corridor, but even that defiant heartbeat faltered in the shadows of what followed. The castle, for one fragile year more, sheltered under Dumbledore's watchful gaze during the 6th school term, where whispers of war grew louder with each passing owl post. Students returned uneasy, professors on edge, as Draco Malfoy's pale face betrayed secrets too heavy for a boy of 16. Yet no one foresaw the storm breaking on the highest tower, where stars witnessed the unthinkable. On the night of June 30th, 1997, the Astronomy Tower became a stage for tragedy. Dumbledore, weakened by a cursed necklace Draco had smuggled in, stood cornered by the boy tasked with his murder. Fenrir Greyback's snarls echoed below, Death Eaters clamouring at the gates. Severus Snape arrived not as saviour, but executioner, his wand steady as he uttered the killing curse that silenced the greatest wizard alive. The old headmaster tumbled from the battlements, his body crumpling on the lawns below, amid screams from Harry Potter. Hidden too late beneath an invisibility cloak, the air thickened with grief, the castle groaning as if in mourning. Suits of armour, clanging faintly in distant halls. Dawn broke over a Hogwarts forever scarred. Students gathered in stunned clusters, professors pale and whispering, the great hall filled with sobs that no silencing charm could hush. McGonagall's face hardened into resolve. Flitwick's eyes red-rimmed, Slughorn guilt-ridden for his part in the night's failures. The Ministry arrived swiftly, Aurors swarming the grounds, but their investigations yielded nothing. Snape and the Death Eaters fled into the night, the trail cold as Voldemort's smile. Dumbledore's funeral pyre burned bright on the lake's edge, a white marble tomb rising where Phoenix Song once soared, attended by centaurs and merpeople who bowed to the fallen leader. Yet beneath the solemnity, fear took root. With Dumbledore gone, the ancient protections woven into Hogwarts' very foundations began to unravel. Wards tied to his unmatched power, blood wards echoing his sacrifices, invisible shields that had repelled dark forces for decades. The castle felt exposed, its magic dimming like a candle in wind, vulnerable to any shadow that dared approach. Whispers spread through the wizarding world. Hogwarts might close its doors for good. Parents panicked, pulling children home, owls flooding the ministry with demands for safety. The interim government under Rufus Scrimgeour struggled to reassure a fracturing society. But Voldemort's shadow loomed larger with every raid and disappearance. That was the true fallout of Dumbledore's death and the collapse of the school's protection. No mere loss of a man, but the shattering of a bulwark against darkness, leaving the Wizarding Britain's greatest sanctuary adrift in peril. Summer deepened into dread. On August 1st, Voldemort struck the Ministry at its heart. Pious Thickness, Imperiused Puppet, paved the way as Death Eaters infiltrate the atrium, Yaxley blasting through defences. Scrimgeour fell resisting, his final words a curse on the traitors. Voldemort himself appeared, claiming victory, installing Thickness as Minister for Magic in a coup veiled as legitimacy. The Daily Prophet twisted overnight, headlines praising the Dark Lord's return. Muggle-borns branded as threats under new registration laws. Pure blood supremacy surged into policy, Azkaban emptied of loyalists, Dementors unleashed on dissenters. The Ministry's fall to the Death Eaters birthed a new legal Hogwarts, one sanctioned by tyranny, its curriculum to be reshaped in Voldemort's image. September 1st dawned under storm clouds as students boarded the Hogwarts Express, the Scarlet Engine pulling away from a London thick with snatchers. Whispers filled the compartments. Had the school really reopened? Who would lead it now? The Headmaster's office, once Dumbledore's haven of silver instruments and Phoenix Perch, stood empty until the Sorting Hat's song rang out, eerily subdued. Then came the announcement, chilling in its finality. Severus Snape, potions master long distrusted, ascended to the post. Appointed by the Puppet Ministry, he strode into the Great Hall, black robes billowing, his voice slicing through the hush like a severing charm. This was Severus Snape's ascension. The darkest day in the history of the office, a Slytherin pure blood with Death Eater ink staining his arm, now holding the keys to the castle's soul. Snape's speech dripped with false assurance, promising unity under the new regime. Her eyes darted to the Carrows flanking him, Alecto and Amicus, hulking siblings with wands eager for pain. McGonagall's lips thinned. Neville Longbottom gripped his fork like a weapon. Luna Lovegood's dreamy gaze sharpened with quiet fury. The enchanted ceiling mirrored the unease, stars flickering as if flinching from the truth. Teachers exchanged glances heavy with unspoken rebellion, knowing the protection's collapse left them cornered. Snape's rule wouldn't echo Umbridge's petty cruelties. This was deeper, a velvet glove over an iron fist, enforcing loyalty to the Dark Lord through every lesson and lash. As feasts concluded and first years vanished into dorms, the castle seemed to hold its breath. Full-body mirrors in corridors showed hollow faces. Staircases hesitated mid-turn. Portraits murmured dissent from gilded frames. Snape retreated to the office where past Headmasters' portraits stirred, Phineas Nigellus smirking approval, Armando Dippet averting eyes. But one absence loomed. No portrait for Dumbledore yet. the magic waiting for time's verdict. Whispers of resistance flickered in Gryffindor Tower, plans hatching amid the embers of Dumbledore's army. Yet Snape's spies were everywhere, the air thick with enforced silence. This fragile stalemate teetered on the edge of explosion, a puppet regime straining against invisible strings. What cruelties would Snape unleash as Headmaster? And how long before the castle's spirit rebelled once more? You'll discover the harrowing details in our next chapter, Headmaster Snape, the Puppet King, where the true nightmare of his reign unfolds. On September 1st, 1997, the gates of Hogwarts creaked open to a school forever changed. The once welcoming castle loomed under a bruised sky, its towers casting langs that seemed to swallow the arriving students whole. Whispers of Dumbledore's death still hung in the air like a curse. And now Severus Snape stood at the entrance to the Great Hall, his black robes billowing slightly in the chill draught, eyes scanning the sea of frightened faces. The feast that night unfolded in silence, heavier than any enchantment. No sorting hat sang its usual rhymes of unity and bravery. Instead, the enchanted ceiling mirrored the dread below, storm clouds roiling without a drop of rain. Carriages had brought students from Hogsmeade Station, but journey felt like a procession to judgment. Pure bloods sat rigid, half-bloods exchanged uneasy glances, and Muggle-borns clutched their robes, wondering if they'd make it through the year. Snape rose to speak, his voice a low silken drawl that cut through the tension like a severing charm. He welcomed them to Hogwarts under the new regime, his words laced with the Ministry's decree, now puppeted by Voldemort's iron grip. Death Eaters lined the staff table, Alecto and Amicus Carrow grinning wolfishly, their wands at the ready. This was the grim atmosphere of the first day, under Death Eater rule, a place where hope flickered like a Dementor's breath on a candle flame. Behind that imposing facade, Snape navigated an impossible position, protecting the students while serving the Dark Lord. Appointed headmaster by a ministry fallen to shadow, he was Voldemort's man on the inside. Yet his true allegiance burned for the Order of the Phoenix, a secret forged in Dumbledore's final moments atop the Astronomy Tower. Every decree he signed twisted like a knife, enforcing curfews that kept kids safer from raids, banning gatherings that prevented whispers from reaching the wrong ears. He patrolled the corridors at night, his presence a deterrent to the worst excesses. Even as he bowed to the Dark Lord's will in public, students saw a tyrant, teachers a traitor, but Snape played the long game, shielding Hogwarts from total annihilation. One wrong glance, one hesitant order, and Voldemort's wrath would descend. He confided in no one, his occlumency a fortress against legilimency probes, buying time for the resistance brewing beyond the walls. Changes rippled through the castle like poison in the well. The library shelves emptied of books praising Muggle achievements, replaced by tomes of pure blood propaganda. Quidditch pitches lay fallow, brooms locked away to crush spirits further. And in the curriculum, the most chilling shift, the removal of defense from the dark arts class. What was once defense against the dark arts became simply dark arts, a blatant signal of the new order. Students would learn curses, not counters. Imperius Cruciatus, Avada Kedavra demonstrated as tools of control, not threats to fear. Snape oversaw it all, his signature on the syllabus, a bitter necessity, ensuring the Carrows' lessons stayed within bounds he could subtly undermine. Whispers spread through the Gryffindor common room, like fiend fire. Harry Potter, absent but ever present in legend, had vanished into the night after the tower's tragedy, leaving a void filled with dread. Ron and Hermione's friends huddled, plotting in shadows, while Draco Malfoy avoided eyes that once sought his friendship. Snape's portrait gallery in the headmaster's office watched silently. Phineas Nigellus Black sneering from his frame, Armando Dippet fidgeting with worry. Even they sensed the precipice. Snape spent nights alone in that office, poring over maps of the castle's secret passages, fortifying wards against intruders, while feigning loyalty at Malfoy Manor gatherings. Tensions simmered toward eruption. Students bore the brunt, Detentions meted out with unforgivable curses for minor infractions. Muggle studies twisted into hatred seminars, yet Snape intervened where he could. A pointed glare halting Alecto's wand mid-swing. A delayed owl post sparing a letter from interception. His double life frayed him. Sleepless eyes hollow each dawn. The weight of Dumbledore's trust heavier than the sorting hat. Voldemort summoned him often, testing his devotion with tasks that skirted the unthinkable. Still, Snape held the line, a puppet king whose strings were pulled by light disguised as dark. By spring, the cracks widened. Teachers like Minerva McGonagall rallied in quiet defiance, their loyalty to Hogwarts overriding fear. Snape's edicts clashed with the Carrows' zealotry, whispers of rebellion echoing through the dungeons. On May 2nd, 1998, as battle engulfed the grounds, his reign shattered. Fleeing to the Dark Lord one final time, Snape met his end in the Shrieking Shack. Nagini's fangs delivering the blow Harry witnessed through a stolen memory. Those silver strands revealed everything: the unbreakable vow, Lily's sacrifice, decades of atonement. In death, truth emerged. The headmaster who seemed darkest had been the school's silent guardian. Harry himself petitioned for Snape's portrait, arguing his courage deserved a place among the flawed greats. McGonagall, tears in her eyes, agreed. Today it hangs in the office, a stern reminder of sacrifices unseen. Snape's tenure, brief and brutal, etched him into Hogwarts' shadowed pantheon, misunderstood spy, unwilling despot, forever the puppet king. But the true horrors of that year deepened under the shadows he could only partially restrain. Next, in Chapter 18, the Carrow regime. Discover how brother and sister turned the castle into a torture chamber, and why their lessons scarred a generation forever. As the echoes of Snape's tense welcome speech faded on that 1st of September in 1997, the true enforcers of the new regime slithered into place. Amicus and Alecto Carrow, hulking siblings and devoted Death Eaters, took their posts as professors, their presence alone enough to thicken the air with dread. Amicus, the squat, toad-like brother with a perpetual sneer, seized control of what was once defense against the dark arts, now rechristened simply the dark arts. Alecto, his equally brutish sister, commandeered Muggle studies, twisting it into something far more sinister. You could feel the shift in the castle's stones that very week. Classrooms that had buzzed with spells of protection now reeked of malice. Amicus Carrow wasted no time introducing torture as a teaching method, striding into lessons with a manic glint in his eye, wand raised high. He demanded students practice the Cruciatus curse on one another, right there at their desks, claiming it built character under the Dark Lord's vision. Those who hesitated faced his own blistering hex first, their screams bouncing off the dungeon walls like shattering glass. Homework assignments, Crucio on spiders or first years if you dared refuse. The air hummed with agony, the scent of singed robes and sweat-soaked fear clinging to every corridor. Professors like Flitwick and Sprout watched in impotent horror, their own wands confiscated if they intervened. While Snape patrolled the shadows, his face a mask, intervening only when the Carrows pushed too far toward death. Alecto's classroom offered no refuge, only a deeper poison. Muggle studies, once a gentle exploration of the non-magical world, transformed into a propaganda machine, its blackboard scrawled with venomous lies. Muggles were depicted as subhuman vermin, scheming parasites, plotting to enslave wizards with their machines and medicines. Lessons featured grotesque caricatures, fat Muggle politicians grinding wizards underfoot, their teeth filed to points, while Alecto screeched about blood purity, forcing students to recite slogans like "Mudbloods must burn" under threat of her brother's whip. Essays praised the Dark Lord's purges. Diagrams illustrated how to spot and torment Muggle sympathizers. The curriculum drilled hatred into young minds, turning friends against families with Muggle ties. Whispers of expulsion or Azkaban for any who questioned the bile. Whispers spread through the Great Hall like smoke from a dying fire. Plates clattered under trembling hands. Eyes darted to the staff table where the Carrows gorged on their feasts, laughing through mouthfuls. Snape's meals went untouched, his gaze fixed on the doors as if expecting the next outrage. He issued decrees banning Muggle-borns outright, their letters revoked, their beds stripped bare. The castle groaned under curfews and patrols. Peeves the Poltergeist silenced for the first time in centuries by a threat too dire to ignore. Yet beneath this iron grip, flickers of defiance stirred in the Gryffindor common room, where bruises bloomed on arms and spirits hardened like dragonhide. Neville Longbottom, once the clumsy boy eclipsed by Harry Potter's shadow, emerged as the unlikeliest flame. Scarred from Bellatrix's tortures at the Department of Mysteries, he bore the Carrows' cruelties with a jaw set like flint. It started small, tripping Electo in the halls, smuggling banned books into dorms, but swelled into something bolder. Neville revived Dumbledore's army as an underground resistance, rallying the remnants in the Room of Requirement, that shape-shifting sanctuary materializing as a warren of cots and strategy maps. Ginny Weasley and Luna Lovegood joined him, their meetings hushed by Muffliato charms, plotting sabotage, exploding cauldrons in the Carrows' path, graffiti spelling Dumbledore's army in corridors that Peeves amplified with gleeful cackles. Word of the DA spread like fiend fire through the houses. Seamus Finnegan brewed stink bombs potent enough to clear the staff room. Michael Corner forged fake passes for midnight raids on the greenhouses, harvesting mandrakes to scream back at Amicus during lessons. Neville led charges against the Carrows themselves, enduring jinxes that left him limping but never broken, his grandmother's sword-like resolve fueling every stand. Snape knew. His office portraits murmured of it but turned a blind eye, his double game a fragile thread holding chaos at bay. The regime cracked under these pinpricks. Students grew bold, teachers whispered support, and the castle's ancient magic seemed to pulse in quiet approval, suits of armour creaking toward rebellion. Month by month, the Carrow terror ground on, but Neville's DA wove a web of hope through the despair. They trained in secrecy, dueling dummies scarred by stunners, sharing tales of Harry's survival to stoke the fire. One night, as Neville stood atop the battered room's dais, rallying 24 faces etched with resolve, the air thickened with possibility. The Carrows ruled by fear, but fear has limits when met with unyielding light. And from those depths of desperation, a legendary artifact would soon surface, pulled from the black waters of the lake itself. A tale of courage and cunning will plunge into next in Chapter 19, The Sword and the Lake. Amid the Carrows' classrooms, where screams echoed under the guise of lessons and propaganda poisoned young minds against their own kind, Severus Snape sat alone in the Headmaster's office, the weight of the castle pressing down like an unbreakable curse. The gargoyle had sealed him in with its mechanical grind, but no door could contain the storm raging inside him. Outwardly, he enforced the regime, signing decrees that banned gatherings, approving punishments that left scars. But in the shadows of that circular room, with its whirring silver instruments fallen silent and portraits dozing in feigned sleep, Snape orchestrated moves that could shatter everything. He knew Harry Potter was out there, hunted like a dog through Britain's frozen wilds, piecing together the Horcrux hunt without Dumbledore's guidance. The sword of Godric Gryffindor, that goblin-forged relic hidden in the Headmaster's office, was key, imbued now with basilisk venom, perfect for destroying a Horcrux. But Voldemort's forces scoured the school. The sword couldn't simply be handed over. Snape had to thread the needle, using his unparalleled skill in legilimency and occlumency to shield his thoughts from the Dark Lord's probes during those suffocating evenings at Malfoy Manor. Night after night, he'd retreat to his office, pacing the worn Persian rugs stained by generations of spilled potions and secrets, calculating risks that would doom him if they failed. One such maneuver came in the dead of winter, when snow blanketed the forbidden forest and the lake's surface turned to unyielding ice. Snape had overheard whispers from the portraits. those painted eyes that linked every headmaster before him, and pieced together Harry's desperate need for the sword. From his office window, high above the sloping lawns, he watched the Thestrals wheel in the moonlight. Invisible harbingers for those who'd seen death. With a flick of his wand, quieter than a breath, he conjured his Patronus, a silver doe, luminous and fleet, bursting from the tip like liquid starlight. It slipped through the castle's defences, past patrolling Dementors that Voldemort had unleashed, and streaked into the night toward the Forest of Dean, where Harry and Hermione Granger huddled in their tent, frost rhyming their eyelashes. That doe led them to the frozen lake, its glow dancing on the ice like a will-o'-the-wisp. Harry, plunging into the depths after it vanished, grasped the sword encrusted there, not by chance but by Snape's design. He charmed it into the pond weeks earlier, during a solitary patrol under cover of fiendfire illusions, to mask his actions from the Carrows. The water's chill gripped Harry like fiendfire's own flames, his lungs burning as the sword's hilt cut his hand, drawing blood that proved his worthiness. Emerging triumphant, Harry had no idea the man he despised most had saved him yet again. Snape's secret maneuvers to aid Harry Potter from within the headmaster's office wove through the regime's iron grip like venom in a vein. Subtle deliveries of intelligence via house elves he'd compelled with unbreakable vows. Diversions that kept Death Eater raids from Ravenclaw Tower, where resistance brewed. Even falsified reports to Voldemort, claiming the Order was crumbling faster than it was. But that silver doe carried peril sharper than any goblin blade. Patronuses bear the caster's essence, an echo of the soul's deepest joy, and Snape's mirrored Lily Potter's own. A doe swam through his memories of lost love, conjured amid grief that could crack mountains. If anyone loyal to Voldemort had spotted it streaking from the castle, traced its path back, the risk was annihilation. Whispers among the portraits had already stirred. Phineas Nigellus Black's painted sneer questioned his loyalties during one tense council, forcing Snape to silence them with a glare that promised oblivion. The Dark Lord summoned him more frequently now, those serpentine eyes slitting as they probed for disloyalty. Voldemort's voice hissing queries about Potter's movements. One slip, one unguarded memory of that doe bounding free, and Snape's double life would unravel in Crucio and worse. He nearly exposed his true allegiance. That night, the doe lingering a heartbeat too long on the castle battlement, its glow catching the edge of a Carrows patrol light. Amicus had grumbled about some silvery foxfire, but Snape deflected it the next morning with a casual memory charm, his face a mask of disdain. Yet in the quiet hours doubt gnawed. Had he pushed too far? The toll mounted, invisible chains heavier than Azkaban's. Snape was the most hated man in the wizarding world. Title carved deeper than the dark mark on his arm. Students spat his name in corridors, their eyes burning with the memory of Dumbledore's fall. Teachers like McGonagall stared daggers during staff meetings, her wand twitching under the table. Even the house elves averted their gazes, their pops hurried away from his presence. In the office, portraits muttered condemnations, Armando Dippet's frail voice lamenting the school's fall, Dilys Derwent urging open rebellion. Snape bore it alone. No confidant save the pensieve, where he poured memory after memory of Lily's green eyes, her laughter dissolving into screams under James Potter's invisibility cloak. Sleepless nights blurred into days, his sallow face gaunt under the strain, black robes hanging looser on a frame whittled by tension. Voldemort's favour soured to suspicion. Carrows chafed at his restraints on their sadism, plotting whispers reaching his ears through charmed coins. He walked the castle's halls like a ghost, the weight of every averted gaze a Dementor's kiss, eroding the occlumency walls he'd built over decades. Hatred from all sides, students, staff, Death Eaters, even the man he served in deception, isolated him utterly, a man adrift in a sea of loathing, sustained only by a vow whispered to a dying friend atop a lightning-struck tower. Through it all, the sword's absence went unnoticed. Voldemort fixated on elder wands and hollow victories, but cracks spiderwebbed the regime. Whispers of rebellion grew bolder. Harry's hunt edged closer to triumph. Snape's gambit with the lake had paid off, the sword now in hands that would wield it true. Yet the noose tightened, forcing choices no man could evade forever. Up next, Chapter 20, The Flight of the Headmaster. What desperate act finally tore Snape from his throne, leaving Hogwarts teetering on the brink? I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. Snape's delicate dance in the shadows had reached its breaking point. That silver doe, conjured from the depths of his Patronus charm, had guided Harry to the sword of Gryffindor beneath the frozen lake. But its glow nearly unravelled everything. Whispers spread through the castle, like frost on a window pane, rumours of Harry's survival, of resistance stirring in the hidden corners of Hogwarts. By May 2nd, 1998, the air thickened with inevitability. Students who had evacuated months earlier now flooded back through secret passages, their faces set with quiet fire. The Carrows' iron grip cracked under the weight of it all, and the teachers, those steadfast guardians of the old ways, could no longer stand idle. In the headmaster's office, portraits murmured urgently, their painted eyes tracking Snape's every pacing step. Phineas Nigellus Black leaned forward in his frame, his voice a silky drawl laced with dark amusement. The boy's back, Severus. You knew this day would come. But Snape's responses grew clipped, his black eyes distant, fixed on the larger game. Voldemort's forces encircled the grounds, yet the true storm brewed inside the castle walls. Professors Flitwick, Sprout and McGonagall, loyal to the bone, seething under enforced silence, sensed the shift. They had endured the Carrows' cruelties, the mandated lessons in the unforgivable curses, the endless detentions that left scars. Now, with Harry Potter's return igniting hope, they moved as one. The Great Hall pulsed with tension that evening, its long tables shoved aside to clear space for what felt like Judgment Day. Enchanted ceiling roiled with storm clouds, thunder rumbling low like the growl of an ancient beast. Hundreds of students crammed the benches, wands clutched tight, while Death Eaters lingered at the edges, their masks casting elongated shadows from the floating candles. Snape stood at the dais, robes billowing slightly in the draught from the high windows, his presence a cold anchor amid the chaos. He had summoned everyone there under the pretense of order, but his words faltered as Minerva McGonagall strode forward, her tartan robes crisp, spectacles glinting with unyielding resolve. "You've been headmaster here for less than a year," she said, a Scottish burr cutting sharp through the hush. "And in that time you've allowed this school to become a prison for our students, a torture chamber for the innocent." A wand rose steady, emerald eyes locked on his. The hall held its breath. Gasps rippled from the Slytherin table. Cheers from Gryffindor. Snape's lip curled, but he made no retort. Instead, McGonagall unleashed the first spell, a streak of blue-white light that shattered a nearby goblet into glittering shards. "Peertotum locomotor," she cried next, and statues along the walls shuddered to life, stone giants lumbering forward with grinding limbs. Chaos erupted in a symphony of spells. Flitwick sent chairs skittering like startled crabs. Sprout summoned vines that snaked across the floor to ensnare the Carrows. Snape deflected McGonagall's curses with effortless flicks, protego after protego, silver shields blooming like fragile moons. But he didn't counterattack. Not truly. A jet of red light from her wand grazed his sleeve, singeing the fabric, yet he merely sidestepped, his face a mask of controlled fury. Why hold back? In that moment, every eye wondered the same. He could have ended it, Sectum Sempra, the curse he invented in his youth, or any number of dark arts at his command. The teachers pressed harder, their spells weaving a deadly tapestry, but Snape wove through them like smoke, disarming only when forced, never striking to kill. His refusal stemmed from the unbreakable vow of his double life. To fight back meant risking the lives of those he secretly protected, The students huddled in fear, the professors who might fall to his superior skill. Dumbledore's final plan demanded precision. Snape must appear the loyal Death Eater, must flee intact to Voldemort's side, reserving his cover for one last crucial act. Harm McGonagall and the Order fractures. Kill a colleague and the portraits testify forever. No, his role was not conqueror here, but guardian in disguise. He had already smuggled messages, ensured Harry's path remained open. Fighting back would shatter that fragile web, dooming the boy who unknowingly carried Lily's eyes. So he parried, dodged, his breath steady, even as sweat beaded his brow, buying time until the inevitable. With a final sweeping gesture, Snape shattered a window high above, cold night air howling in like a banshee's wail. He vaulted onto a summoned broomstick, its bristles whispering against the stone floor, and shot upward into the storm-lashed sky. The confrontation dissolved into stunned silence, broken only by the cheers of the hall. Snape's flight marked more than escape. It was the symbolic abandonment of the school he had sworn to defend in shadows. Hogwarts, once his shadowed throne, now stood exposed, its false headmaster gone. The castle's defences laid bare before the encroaching dark. He soared toward the Forbidden Forest, where Nagini awaited under Voldemort's command, leaving behind the weight of unspoken sacrifices. In the Great Hall, wands lowered, faces turned skyward through the jagged glass. McGonagall straightened her hat, her voice steady amid the adrenaline. The headmaster has fled. Hogwarts belongs to us again. But the victory tasted bittersweet, laced with the chill of what loomed beyond the gates. Snape's departure signalled the end of his hidden tenure, the darkest chapter closing as the true battle ignited. Up next in Chapter 21, the Battle of Hogwarts, you'll witness the castle's final stand. Explosions that reshape the grounds, betrayals unveiled in the heat of fire, and a reckoning that echoes through wizarding history forever. What secrets does that night hold for the survivors? Stay with me. Snape vanished in a swirl of dark robes, fleeing the Great Hall without casting a single spell against Minerva McGonagall or the teachers who had turned on him. That moment marked the end of his tenure as headmaster, but the castle he left behind was no longer the oppressed fortress it had become under Death Eater rule. Hogwarts, with its ancient stones and shifting staircases, began to awaken, as if the very walls remembered every dark deed etched into its history, from Slytherin's Basilisk lurking in hidden chambers to the Carrows' cruelties enforced in its classrooms. As the Battle of Hogwarts erupted on May 2nd, 1998, the castle itself emerged as a living force, fighting back against the shadows that had plagued it for centuries. Those towering walls, scarred by spells and sieges, didn't just stand passive, they rebelled. Staircases twisted under the feet of Death Eater invaders, refusing to carry them to upper floors. Doorways sealed shut with a groan of stone and mortar, trapping snarling werewolves in endless corridors that looped like a labyrinth. Even the suits of armour, animated by McGonagall's fierce command, clattered to life, their metal fists pounding against the intruders who dared profane the place. House elves scurried from the kitchens, hurling knives and cauldrons with unexpected fury, while Peeves the poltergeist cackled through the chaos, dropping chandeliers on Voldemort's followers. It was as though Hogwarts, weary of headmasters like Phineas Nigellus Black with his sneering prejudices, or Dolores Umbridge's pink-clad tyranny, had finally drawn a line. The portraits in the corridors whispered warnings and slammed frames in faces, their painted eyes alive with the ghosts of past leaders who knew the cost of darkness. This wasn't mere defense. It was the school reclaiming its soul, stone by stone, against the long parade of its darkest custodians. Amid the roar of curses lighting up the night sky, Severus Snape sought refuge in the Shrieking Shack, that forsaken hovel on the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Voldemort himself tracked him there, his serpentine face twisted in cold suspicion. Nagini, the Dark Lord's monstrous snake, struck without mercy, her fangs tearing into Snape's throat as Harry, Ron and Hermione watched unseen from beneath Harry's invisibility cloak. Snape slumped against the grimy wall, blood bubbling from his neck, his black eyes finding Harry in the shadows. With his dying breaths, he pressed his memories into a silvery thread, thrusting them toward the boy he had tormented for 7 years. Those memories floated like liquid starlight into Harry's hands, carrying the weight of secrets long buried. As Harry plunged into the Pensieve later that night, amid the battle's fleeting lull, the truth unfolded in haunting vignettes. The revelation of the prince's tale. He saw young Severus, a sallow boy on a riverbank, offering a branch of white flowers to Lily Evans, his voice soft with unspoken longing. Their friendship bloomed amid Muggle streets and Hogwarts' early wonders, only to fracture under the poison of James Potter's bullying and Severus's slide into the Death Eaters. The night of Lily's death replayed in agonizing clarity. Snape collapsing before Dumbledore, begging for her life, his world shattering as Voldemort's curse claimed her. Dumbledore's pact sealed it. Snape's lifelong atonement, spying in the shadows, enduring hatred to protect Harry, the living echo of his lost love. Every sneer in potions class, every detention assigned, master vigil that stretched back to that prophecy, overheard in 1980. The Half-Blood Prince's textbook, once a badge of his cunning youth, now symbolized the double life he led. Harry emerged from those visions changed, staggering under the enormity of it all. For 17 years, since the night his parents died, Snape had carried this burden alone, his loyalty to Lily fueling a deception so profound it fooled even the Dark Lord. Every cutting remark had been a shield, every glance away a safeguard. Harry, who had despised him as a murderer, now saw the man who ensured his survival at every turn, planting the sword of Gryffindor, guiding that silver doe through frozen depths, even killing Dumbledore at the old wizard's pleading command to preserve the greater plan. Snape's life had been one long penance, woven into the fabric of Harry's own, and in that realization, Harry whispered forgiveness into the empty air of the Shrieking Shack. The battle raged on, but Snape's sacrifice tipped the scales, his memories arming Harry for the final confrontation. Yet questions lingered in the aftermath, swirling like smoke from cursed flames. What place would such a complicated figure claim among the Headmaster's portraits? Those eternal watchers in the office. In our next chapter, The Portrait Controversy, we'll uncover the fierce debates and hidden truths that surrounded Snape's legacy in that sacred room. Stay with me to see why it divided even the dead. As the echoes of the Battle of Hogwarts faded and the castle began to heal its wounds, Severus Snape's silver memories lingered in Harry's mind like a half-forgotten potion recipe, revealing the depth of his sacrifice. Those shimmering threads of the prince's tale painted a man who had lived in shadows, loving from afar, spying from within, dying for a boy he once loathed. But recognition wouldn't come easily. In the Headmaster's office, where portraits of past leaders hung in eternal vigil, whispering counsel to their successors, one spot remained conspicuously empty. Minerva McGonagall, now stepping into the role of interim headmistress amid the rubble, faced a delicate tradition. Every headmaster or mistress, no matter how brief or controversial their tenure, earned a place on that circular wall. Phineas Nigellus Black scowled from his frame despite his unpopularity. Armando Dippet gazed benignly, even after his failures with Tom Riddle. Even Dolores Umbridge, that toad-like tyrant, had a portrait added later, though it was said to mutter pink platitudes to itself in the corner. Yet when McGonagall summoned the painters to immortalize the school's leaders, Snape's name sparked murmurs among the ghosts and the painted eyes. The initial refusal to hang Snape's portrait among the other headmasters came swiftly, rooted in the raw pain of his apparent betrayal. Teachers who had duelled him in the Great Hall still nursed bruises from his spells. Students whispered of the Carrows' cruelties under his watch, the Forbidden Forest patrols, the chill of Death Eater banners fluttering over the towers. McGonagall herself, though she had led the charge against him, hesitated. The office's magic, tied to Hogwarts' ancient wards, seemed to resist as well. Candles flickered uneasily, The sorting hat grumbled from its shelf. Whispers spread through the corridors. Snape, the traitor who slew Dumbledore, the puppet of Voldemort, deserved no eternal seat among the likes of Slytherin or Dippet. His absence felt like a purge, a final cleansing of the darkest chapter. But Harry Potter, scarred and weary from the final confrontation, refused to let the story end there. He had seen the truth in the pensieve, felt the weight of Snape's unrequited love for Lily, the relentless protection woven into every barbed word and greasy glare. In the days following the victory feast, as Aurors combed the grounds for remnants of dark magic, Harry began his personal crusade to honour the bravest man he ever knew. He approached McGonagall in the rebuilt staff room, the air still thick with the scent of phoenix ash and repair charms. His voice steady, despite the lightning bolt on his forehead, carried the conviction of someone who had stared into the abyss and found redemption there. Harry argued not from sentiment, but from the unyielding facts of Snape's double life. The memories proved it. The occlumency lesson shielding Harry's mind. The counter-curses whispered to savers during Quidditch matches. The sword delivered to the lake's frozen depths. He recounted how Snape had begged Dumbledore for the astronomy tower task, knowing it would brand him forever. McGonagall's lips thinned, her spectacles glinting in the firelight, but Harry's persistence wore at her resolve. He rallied others, Ron and Hermione, who pored over old ministry records. Even Draco Malfoy, glimpsed in the shadows of the Slytherin table, offered a silent nod of acknowledgement. Letters flew to the ministry, petitions circulated among alumni, and Harry himself visited Gringotts to retrieve artifacts from Snape's hidden vaults, each one a thread in the tapestry of loyalty. The campaign stretched over weeks, unfolding like a slow brewing polyjuice, transforming outrage into understanding. Staff meetings grew tense, with Flitwick defending Snape's potions mastery, Sprout recalling his quiet aid during greenhouse sabotages. Ghosts like nearly headless Nick drifted through walls, sharing tales of Snape's solitary patrols against darker threats. Harry stood before the assembled portraits one stormy evening, the thunder rumbling like a troll's footsteps, and pleaded his case directly to them. Phineas Nigellus sneered at first, a half-blood upstart meddling in Slytherin affairs. But even he fell silent as Harry evoked the shared bloodline of cunning and sacrifice. Finally, reconciliation dawned in the soft glow of dawn, filtering through the office windows. McGonagall, her tartan robes crisp as ever, authorised the portrait. Artisans from the ministry's portrait division arrived, their brushes dipping into enchanted oils that captured not just Snape's sallow face and hooked nose, but the flicker of regret in his black eyes, the subtle curve of a half-smile. When it was hung, high on the wall between Dippet and the empty space, once eyed for Umbridge, the other portraits stirred. Dilys Derwent nodded approvingly. Dexter Fortescue raised a ghostly goblet. Snape himself, stirring to life in oils, fixed Harry with that familiar glare, but softer now, laced with something like peace. Word spread through the school like fiend fire contained. Snape's legacy, once a stain, became woven into Hogwarts archives. New textbooks mentioned his role in the shadows of the war, his portrait offering terse advice to future headmasters on brewing wolfsbane or navigating ministry politics. Students passing the office caught glimpses of him arguing with Finishinist jealous over pure blood nonsense. Their barbs a reminder that even the darkest heads carried light. Harry's crusade didn't erase the pain. The Carrows scars lingered. The renamed Dark Arts classroom reverted with effort, but it restored balance, proving Hogwarts remembered its complexity. And as we turn our gaze to the shadows cast by all these figures, comparing their reigns side by side reveals patterns you won't believe. Tyrants from Slytherin to Snape, ranked by their grip on power and the echoes they left behind. Up next in Chapter 23, comparing the Tyrants, Harry Potter's insistence finally secured Severus Snape's portrait a place among the others. Quiet tribute to the man he called the bravest he ever knew. But as that painted face joined the ranks in the headmaster's office, staring out with those unyielding black eyes. It forced a reckoning. How did Snape measure up against the true tyrants who'd gripped Hogwarts before him? These were leaders whose shadows lingered longest in the corridors, their decisions etching scars into generations of students. Picture the stone walls echoing with whispers of fear under Dolores Umbridge's brief but venomous rule in 1996. She didn't just enforce decrees, she revelled in the breaking of spirits. Students caught with banned books faced her quill, carving "must not tell" lies into their own flesh, blood welling up as ink, while she simpered behind her toad-like smile. Detentions became rituals of agony, her sadism personal and unrelenting, aimed at crushing any spark of rebellion. Fred and George Weasley unleashed chaos to drive her out, but not before she'd turned the castle into a prison of pink nightmares, where even the staircases seemed to conspire against her hated presence. The office door itself barred her entry, as if Hogwarts rejected her at its core. Now contrast that with Snape's tenure the following year, a calculated cruelty that chilled deeper because it masqueraded as duty. Appointed by Voldemort's puppet ministry, he renamed Defense Against the Dark Arts to simply Dark Arts, flooding classrooms with Death Eater instructors like the Carrows. Amicus taught Cruciatus as homework. Lecto twisted Muggle studies into lies of supremacy, forcing first years to practice unforgivables on classmates. Snape patrolled the halls in silence, his presence a looming threat, yet he never wielded the wand himself in those months. His cruelty was surgical, enforcing the regime while slipping silver does into frozen forests and sword blades into grasping hands, all to shield the boy who haunted his every choice. Umbridge's sadism was gleeful, hands-on torment. Snape's was a cold machine, grinding down the school to preserve a fragile undercover necessity. This brings us to the heart of their darkness: ideological evil versus the bitter demands of necessity. Umbridge believed every lash of her quill advanced her ministry's vision, a pure-blood world scrubbed of mudblood threats, her hatred as pink and frilly as her plates. Snape's actions, for all their horror, served a greater deception, his double-agent oath to Dumbledore, weighing student suffering against the war's endgame. He allowed the Carrows' barbarism, not from conviction, but to maintain the facade, his mind always on the long game. One delighted in pain as policy, the other inflicted it as the price of survival, which poisons the soul more. To judge who was truly the darkest, we rank them by their impact on students. The lives upended, the innocent shattered, the futures stolen. At the pinnacle stands Dolores Umbridge, her 50-odd days leaving permanent welts on hands and hearts, a symbol of petty, ministry-backed sadism that united the entire school in loathing. Number 2, Salazar Slytherin himself, whose Chamber of Secrets unleashed a basilisk in the castle's cradle years around 990, targeting Muggle-born children with monstrous prejudice before he stormed out. His pure-blood legacy seeded centuries of division, the serpent's gaze claiming lives long after his portrait faded. Third, Severus Snape, whose 8 months amplified the Carrows' reign, turning Hogwarts into a torture academy where kids learned hate as curriculum. The fear was palpable, meals tense under his gaze, yet his hidden maneuvers saved more than they doomed. Fourth, Phineas Nigellus Black, the late 1800s to 1925 grump, whose Muggle-born disdain banned Quidditch over a pure-blood injury and sneered from his portrait even now. His unpopularity festered slowly, eroding morale across decades. Last, Armando Dippet, spanning 1925 to 1971, whose tenure overlapped Tom Riddle's sly murders via the reopened chamber. He expelled Hagrid unjustly, threatened closure, but lacked the malice, more negligent enabler than architect of dread. Each left their mark, portraits whispering judgments from oiled frames. A gallery of Hogwarts' tormented past. Slytherin's basilisk slithered through plumbing. Black's biases soured house rivalries. Dippet's blindness let Voldemort bloom. Umbridge's quill drew first blood in a new war. Snape's shadow hid light in the abyss. Yet in measuring their shadows against students' suffering, The detentions that scarred, the expulsions that ruined, the lessons that broke, the spectrum from fanatic glee to reluctant blade. These tyrants shared a thread though, a fixation that bound their eras, an obsession with blood status, pure over muddied, founder to spy. It pulsed through Slytherin's chamber, black sneers, even the Carrows' propaganda under Snape. What drove that venom across a millennium, turning wands against the innocent? That's the dark heart we'll uncover next in chapter 24. The blood status obsession. While Umbridge's petty cruelties and Snape's shadowed commands vied for the crown of darkest reign, a more insidious force wove through every one of these headmasters' tenures, pulsing like a vein beneath Hogwarts' ancient stones. It was the obsession with blood status, that poisonous conviction that wizarding worth flowed only from pure lineage, turning the school's heart into a battleground for supremacy. Salazar Slytherin embodied this mania from the very beginning. As one of the founders around 990, he didn't just teach. He preached that only those with untainted blood deserved Hogwarts magic. His falling out with Godric Gryffindor, Helga Hufflepuff, and Rowena Ravenclaw wasn't over trifles. It was over Muggleborns, whom he saw as thieves stealing wizardry's birthright. In a fit of rage, he built the Chamber of Secrets deep below the castle, hiding a basilisk to one day purge the school of what he called mudbloods. That chamber lay dormant for centuries. But Slytherin's ideology didn't. It seeped into the Slytherin common room's very walls, whispering ambition, laced with purity, ensuring his pure blood fervour outlived him. Centuries later, that same thread pulled taut under Phineas Nigellus Black, headmaster from the late 1800s until 1925. Sirius Black's great-great-grandfather wasn't subtle about his disdain. He viewed Muggleborns as lesser, an affront to wizarding nobility, and his every decree reinforced it. Remember the 1890 to 1891 school year, when a pure-blood student got injured in Quidditch? Phineas didn't rally the houses. He banned the sport entirely, prioritising blood over unity. Students whispered in the corridors that his portrait still sneered from the headmaster's office. Forever sour, forever elitist, his reign calcified social divides, making half-bloods and Muggleborns feel like intruders in their own school. Even Armando Dippet, who took the helm around 1925 and held it until sometime between 1965 and 1971, couldn't escape the echo. During Tom Riddle's time from 1938 to 1945, the chamber reopened under that pure-blood prodigy's hand. Riddle, obsessed with his own tainted lineage, unleashed the Basilisk, killing students like Moaning Myrtle. Dippet's response: threatened to close Hogwarts rather than confront the rot. He expelled young Hagrid, a half-giant innocent, while the true monster walked free. Dippet's weakness: let blood mania fester, hierarchies hardening as pure blood whispers blamed Muggleborns for the attacks. Tracing the thread of pure blood mania from Slytherin to the Carrows reveals a relentless lineage of prejudice, each headmaster a knot tightening the noose around equality. Dolores Umbridge cranked it further in her brief April to June 1996 tyranny. Installed by the Ministry after Dumbledore fled, she didn't need a basilisk. Her decrees branded Muggleborns as security risks, echoing Slytherin's purge. Educational decrees flew like curses, stifling half-blood voices, exalting pure-blood loyalty to Fudge's regime. The castle itself rebelled. The gargoyle at the headmaster's office barred her entry, as if sensing her diluted darkness. Then came Severus Snape in 1997 and 98. His 8 months as headmaster, the mania's brutal crescendo. Appointed by Voldemort's puppet ministry, Snape renamed Defense Against the Dark Arts to simply Dark Arts, inviting the Carrows, Amicus and Alecto, to twist the curriculum. Alecto turned Muggle studies into propaganda drivel, teaching that Muggleborns were subhuman vermin. Slytherin's Basilisk ideology served cold. Amicus enforced it with Cruciatus curses on whim. Students' screams echoing through stone halls that once rang with laughter. Pure-blood Slytherins strutted openly, Half-bloods and muggle-borns branded, sorted into a new hierarchy of fear. This brings us to how the headmaster's chair was used to enforce or dismantle social hierarchies. Slytherin carved it into the throne's very foundation, using his authority to seed exclusion. Phineas Nigellus wielded it like a scepter, banning joys that crossed bloodlines, his decrees stacking bricks in prejudice's wall. Dippet sat passively, his inertia letting Riddle's pure-blood cult thrive unchecked. Umbridge perched unlawfully, her pink quill scripting laws that elevated ministry purebloods above all. Snape, from that elevated seat, unleashed the Carrows, hierarchies rigid as iron. Slytherins patrolled as enforcers, others cowered. Yet contrast this with Dumbledore, who from the same chair shattered divides, appointing muggle-borns to prefects, fostering houses beyond blood. The chair wasn't cursed. It amplified the sitter's soul, enforcing tyranny or dismantling it with equal power. But Hogwarts had a quiet resistor in the Sorting Hat, that tattered relic born of the founder's own magic. Worn atop every first year's head, it delved into minds, seeing past blood to potential. Under dark headmasters, it pushed back subtly, fiercely. During Umbridge's reign, its song in 1995 shattered tradition, lamenting houses' growing rifts, urging unity against division's poison. Slytherin's legacy laid bare. Slytherins walked out in fury, but the Hat's words lingered, a crack in the pure blood facade. Come Snape's time, as Death Eaters prowled, the Hat yearned to fight. It begged Harry to place it on his head during the Battle of Hogwarts, screaming to choose Gryffindor's sword over neutrality. McGonagall silenced it to protect the stone, but its muffled cries echoed the castle's refusal to bend. Even against Slytherin himself, lore whispers the Hat warned early students of Basilisk perils, its stitches hiding defiance. Time and again, this singing sentinel resisted dark headmasters, sorting not just students but fates, pulling the pure blood thread loads who swear leaders tightened it. Feel the weight of that obsession even now, in the portraits lining the office walls. Phineas Nigellus still mutters slurs from his frame, Snape's gaze brooding in eternal vigil. Yet Harry's plea ensured Snape's place among them, a final twist, honouring the spy who from within began unravelling the mania he enforced. As we step from blood's fevered grip, shadows lengthen toward the stones themselves. Up next, Chapter 25, The Architecture of Evil, uncovers how Hogwarts' very walls conspired, twisted by design into weapons of the wicked. What secrets do those towers hold that even the Hat couldn't sort? While the headmaster's chair sat as the throne for enforcing those blood purity obsessions from Slytherin through the Carrows. The castle itself twisted under their influence, its ancient stones reshaping to serve or sabotage the tyrants who claimed it. Salazar Slytherin didn't just preach pure blood supremacy, he carved it into the school's bones. Deep beneath the castle, in the bowels where the lake's cold waters press against the walls, he constructed the Chamber of Secrets around 990 or 1000, that vast serpentine hall, lined with serpents carved from stone that seemed to writhe in torchlight, became his ultimate weapon, a hidden dungeon accessible only to his heir, stocked with a basilisk whose gaze could petrify the unworthy. The air down there hangs thick with damp rot even now, a reminder of how Slytherin warped Hogwarts' foundations to purge what he saw as filth. The castle yielded to him then, its magic bending to conceal the entrance behind a sink in a girl's bathroom, but it never fully forgot. Phineas Nigellus Black, ruling from the late 1800s until 1925, turned the castle's own labyrinth into an instrument of his disdain. He expanded the Slytherin dungeons, sealing off older tunnels with spells that only pure bloods could unravel, creating private chambers for interrogations of those with Muggle ties. Whispers persist of students vanishing into those depths during his tenure, emerging changed or not at all. The shifting staircases, those endless flights that defy gravity and logic, began to play favourites under his watch, leading Muggle-born pupils into dead ends or looping them endlessly while pure bloods glided smoothly to class. It was control disguised as whimsy. The castle's living architecture enforcing his prejudices without him lifting a wand. Armando Dippet's era, spanning from about 1925 to 1971, saw the castles scarred by Tom Riddle's return to the chamber as headmaster during those 1938 to 1945 attacks. Dippet failed to sense how the dungeons pulsed with renewed malice. The Basilisk slithering free once more, Moaning Myrtle's bathroom echoed with her final scream, and the hidden passages, those secret behind tapestries and through one-eyed witchage, filled with the scurry of frightened ghosts. Dippet ordered reinforcements to the lower levels, bricking up corridors that had once led to forgotten libraries. Inadvertently trapping echoes of the horror within, the staircases grew erratic, stranding students during curfews. As if Hogwarts itself mourned Myrtle and Hagrid's wrongful expulsion, its stones groaning under the weight of injustice. Dolores Umbridge's brief reign in April to June of 1996 twisted the castle into a prison of pink. She couldn't even enter the headmaster's office. The gargoyle refused her password. Stone jaws clamped shut, but she reshaped the grounds above. Inquisitorial squad badges granted access to sealed wings, and she had house elves board up hidden passages that students used for Dumbledore's army meetings. The dungeons became her favoured domain for detentions, where quills drew blood from hands writing lines, the air sharp with ink and muffled sobs. Even the shifting staircases rebelled, depositing her lackeys in broom cupboards or flinging Umbridge herself into inconvenient loops, hinting at the castle's quiet defiance against her saccharine tyranny. Severus Snape's tenure, from September 1997 to May 1998, plunged Hogwarts into its bleakest reconfiguration. Under Death Eater rule, the defence against the dark arts classroom morphed into the dark arts suite, its walls etched with curses that hummed with forbidden power. Amicus and Electo Carrow commandeered the dungeons for Muggle Studies propaganda sessions, where unforgivable curses served as discipline. The stone floors slick with the residue of fear spells. Snape sealed more passages than any before him, using his potions mastery to brew wards that choked off escape routes, trapping students in the castle's tightening grip. The shifting staircases turned malevolent, rearranging to isolate rebels or deliver them straight to the Carrows' mercy, their creaks like the low growl of a beast enforcing the regime. Examining the physical changes to the school during these dark tenures reveals a pattern. Each headmaster didn't just rule Hogwarts, they remoulded it. Slytherin's chamber added layers of secrecy. Black's expansions deepened the divides. Dippet's blockades buried traumas. Umbridge's barricades stifled resistance. Snape's seals amplified oppression. The castle absorbed these alterations, its mortar infused with spells that lingered like bruises. Yet the hidden passages, the dungeons and the shifting staircases served as tools of control in ways both overt and insidious. Passages allowed Slytherin to move unseen, plotting his Basilisk's release. Black used them to spy on undesirables, emerging like a shadow to dole out punishments. Dungeons under Dippet echoed with Riddle's hisses, under Umbridge with screams, under Snape with the Cruciatus curse's crackle, dank vaults amplifying terror. And those staircases, they weren't random. During dark times, they herded the vulnerable, isolated the defiant, their endless ascents a metaphor for futile rebellion, steps vanishing mid-stride to drop the unwary into oblivion. But why does the castle remember its darkest periods? Hogwarts isn't mere stone, it's alive, enchanted by the Founder's magic to protect its own. The stones hold memories, imprinted by blood and spells. Slytherin's rage, Black's sneers, Dippet's blindness, Umbridge's malice, Snape's shadows. During the Battle of Hogwarts, rules shifted to shield students, suits of armour animated against invaders. Passages yawned open for allies. It recalls because it endures, its architecture a palimpsest of pain, overwriting tyranny with resilience. Feel the chill of those dungeons even now. Hear the staircases whisper of betrayals past. Those eternal portraits in the headmaster's office, watching over every regime, holds secrets about how the castle's memory intersects with its former masters. In the next chapter, The Role of the Portraits, we'll uncover what they truly say when no one's listening, and why even the darkest headmasters couldn't silence them forever, while the shifting staircases and shadowed dungeons bent to the will of tyrants like Umbridge and Snape. One element of Hogwarts endured unchanging in the headmaster's office: the portraits of past leaders, their painted eyes fixed on every scheme and surrender. These enchanted frames line the circular walls, capturing the likenesses of every headmaster and headmistress who ever sat in that carved oaken chair, crafted with magic deeper than mere paint and canvas. The subjects within them stir to life, their voices carrying the weight of centuries. Phineas Nigellus Black, with his perpetual scowl, might lean forward from his gilt frame, offering barbed counsel on matters of blood purity. Armando Dippet, frail and bespectacled, could murmur warnings drawn from his own era of hidden horrors in the castle's depths. It's through these frames that former headmasters influence the current ones, a tradition as old as the school itself. When a new leader ascends, the portraits awaken fully, dispensing advice laced with their own histories. Salazar Slytherin's likeness, if it exists in some shadowed corner from those founding years, might whisper of ancient pacts and serpentine secrets. They debate policy in hushed tones late into the night, critiquing decisions with the authority of experience. Dumbledore himself consulted them often, weighing their collective wisdom against his own moral compass, even as Phineas Nigellus grumbled about Muggle-borns infiltrating the halls. Yet this influence isn't always benevolent. Phineas Nigellus, the least popular headmaster in Hogwarts history, whose disdain for anything less than pure blood ran as deep as the Black family vaults, continued his prejudices from beyond the grave. His portrait clashed openly with successors, siding with Slytherin House at every turn, reminding current heads of the old ways during times of reform. Imagine the tension when Minerva McGonagall took the helm after the war, Dippet nodding sagely from his frame, while Phineas sneered at her Gryffindor loyalties. During Dolores Umbridge's brief reign of pink terror, the portraits rebelled outright. The office door sealed itself against her, and the painted figures turned their backs, refusing to acknowledge her self-proclaimed title. But under Severus Snape's tenure, from September 1st, 1997 to May 2nd, 1998, they served as silent witnesses to an even darker chapter. What the portraits saw during the Carrow regime chills the air even now. Amicus and Electo Carrow, those hulking Death Eaters installed as professors, prowled the corridors under Snape's watch. The portraits watched as students were dragged to the dungeons for disciplinary measures, forced to practice the Cruciatus Curse on their peers as punishment for the slightest defiance. Muggle studies devolved into propaganda sessions, pure blood supremacy etched into young minds with quills dipped in fear. In the Great Hall, meals grew sparse, whispers of resistance flickered like dying candles, and the Carrows' wands cracked with unforgivable spells. The frames captured Neville Longbottom's growing rebellion, the DA's coins signalling secret meetings, and teachers like McGonagall subtly undermining the regime from within. Snape himself paced before them nightly, his black robes swirling, confiding nothing. Yet the portraits knew, their painted gazes piercing his double-agent facade. Phineas Nigellus, ever the opportunist, even played spy for Dumbledore in earlier dark times, slipping between frames to report on Umbridge's inquisitorial squad. But during the Carrows' oppression, most held their tongues, bound by loyalty to the office or fear of reprisal. They witnessed the castle's staircases refusing to aid the invaders, passages sealing against patrols, a silent rebellion echoing the architecture's own defiance. This raises profound questions about the ethics of a sentient painting advising the living. Are these portraits truly the souls of the departed, or echoes enchanted to mimic them? J.K. Rowling described them as infused with the subject's personality during creation. allowing movement between linked frames across the wizarding world. They retain memories, biases, and flaws. Phineas Nigellus forever the bigot, Dippet forever haunted by Tom Riddle's shadow. When they counsel McGonagall or any future head, do they guide with wisdom or poison with prejudice? A painting like Slytherin's could perpetuate pure blood dogma for generations, its advice shaping policies long after flesh has failed. Harry Potter grappled with this when advocating for Snape's portrait. Initially refused, it was eventually hung. Snape's dour face joining the ranks. Does his presence redeem the collection, offering lessons in sacrifice? Or complicate it further with his Slytherin sharpness? The ethics blur. These aren't ghosts, unbound and ethereal, but crafted simulacra, loyal to Hogwarts yet coloured by their tenure's darkness. Even Snape's sedition sparked debate among the frames. Phineas approving of the half-blood's cunning, Dippet wary of the chamber's echoes. Their conversations continue, a chorus of the past influencing the present, ensuring no headmaster rules in isolation. As we turn our gaze from these watchful eyes, the true value emerges in what their legacies teach us about avoiding the shadows they've cast. That's where we'll head next in Chapter 27. Lessons from the darkness, uncovering the hard-won wisdom that might just keep Hogwarts forever free. Those portraits in the Headmaster's office, hanging silent through the Carrows' reign of terror, didn't just witness the darkness. They became part of the reckoning that followed, as the Battle of Hogwarts faded into echoes of rubble and triumph. Minerva McGonagall stepped into the shattered office, her tartan robes dusted with ash, and faced those painted eyes one by one. Phineas Nigellus Black sneered from his frame, muttering about the indignity of it all, while Armando Dippet fidgeted, his long fingers twisting in regret over old failures. But it was Severus Snape's empty space on the wall that lingered heaviest. A void McGonagall filled not with erasure, but with hard-won truth. From Slytherin's basilisk-haunted chambers to Umbridge's pink-clad decrees, the dark eras etched scars into Hogwarts' very stones, forcing a transformation that birthed the more inclusive castle we know today. Think of the corridors that once twisted to trap Muggle-born students under Phineas Nigellus's watchful prejudice. Those same passages now flow freely, redesigned after the war, to welcome every witch and wizard, blood status be damned. The Great Hall, where Death Eaters once drilled Cruciatus curses into cowering first years, reopened its doors with house tables, rearranged in a circle, symbolizing unity over division. No longer did the Sorting Hat's song carry whispers of pure-blood legacy. Post-war, it sang of choice and equality, its brim drooping lower as if weary of old divisions. McGonagall, assuming the headship in 1998 amid the ruins, wasted no time on sentiment. She rolled up her sleeves, literally. Her house elf-made cuffs pushed high, and issued the first decrees that reshaped the school from its foundations. Muggle-born enrollment quotas, abolished overnight, with outreach programs, sending owls to hidden families across Britain, ensuring no child like young Tom Riddle slipped through unnoticed. The dark arts curriculum, twisted into propaganda under Snape, was purged. Defense against the dark arts returned with a vengeance, but now mandatory for all years, taught by Aurors, fresh from the ministry's reformed ranks. She even commissioned house elves, those same ones who'd sabotaged Umbridge's regime, to carve new statues into the castle walls, not serpents or eagles of conquest, but phoenixes rising from flames, reminders that resilience outlasts tyranny. Wander the grounds today, and you'll feel the shift in the air itself. The Forbidden Forest, once a no-man's land exploited by dark headmasters for secret plots, now hosts inter-house ecology classes, where Gryffindors and Slytherins alike learn to commune with centaurs. Bridging divides Slytherin himself widened 1,000 years ago. McGonagall's reforms extended to the staff room too. Diversity mandates brought in professors from Borgsbattens and Durmstrang, their accents mingling in the corridors, diluting the pure-blood echo chambers of Phineas Nigellus's day. Even Quidditch pitchers, banned in fits of spite, saw rule changes, mixed team trials to foster friendships across banners, turning rivalries into bonds. Yet the deepest cut of all came in the classrooms, where McGonagall decreed that ignoring the past invites its return. History of Magic, once a droning parade of goblin rebellions under Binns' ghost, transformed into a living chronicle of Hogwarts shadows. Students now pore over replicas of Umbridge's educational decrees, yellowed parchments that curl like frightened snakes, debating how one woman's quill nearly choked the school's spirit. They trace Salazar Slytherin's descent into the chamber on enchanted maps that replay the founder's arguments in flickering light, voices rising like distant thunder. And Snape? His tenure isn't sanitized. Lessons dissect the Carrows' Muggle studies, with survivors like Neville Longbottom guest lecturing on the hem of resistance, his scars faint but stories vivid. This teaching of the dark history isn't mere academics. It's a shield woven from memory. Imagine a 7th-year Slytherin, heir to prejudices that spanned centuries, standing before Dippet's portrait in a simulated office debate, forced to defend expelling Hagrid for Riddle's crimes. The frame stirs, Dippet's voice cracking with long-buried shame, and the student falters, not from force but realization. McGonagall knew repetition thrives in silence. By mandating these reckonings, she ensured the portraits speak not as ghosts of glory, but as cautionary whispers. Pure-blood supremacists like Phineas Nigellus find their edicts dissected in group essays, their unpopularity laid bare through Sirius Black's own scathing quotes. Etched in self-updating textbooks, the reforms rippled outward too. McGonagall petitioned the ministry for funding, ironic after Umbridge's interference, to build the Remembrance Wing, a sunlit annex off the library stacked with artifacts. A shard of the vanishing cabinet from the astronomy tower, a blood quill replica that writes in invisible ink unless activated by intent. Here, Muggle-born and half-blood students lead tours, their voices steady, reclaiming narratives once stolen. Even the house point system evolved, no longer a zero-sum game of division, but with Unity gems awarded for cross-house collaborations, gleaming rubies and sapphires shared alike. Through it all, McGonagall walked the halls at dawn, her lips pursed, ensuring every stone remembered. She hung Snape's portrait herself, not as absolution, but as the ultimate lesson. Even the darkest paths can bend toward light if scrutinized. Those dark eras, from Slytherin's schism to Snape's shadowed tenure, didn't just test Hogwarts, they forged it anew, inclusive and vigilant, a castle that learns from its monsters. And as we close this chapter on those hard lessons, shadows give way to an even greater mystery lurking in the castle's heart. Join me next for chapter 28, The Eternal Guardian, where one ancient protector stands watch over it all, secrets buried deeper than any chamber. As Minerva McGonagall walked the corridors of a Hogwarts reborn, her reforms etching lines of fairness into the castle's ancient stones, she often returned to that circular office at the top of the tallest tower. There, under the watchful eyes of painted predecessors, the air hummed with whispers of every era the school had endured. The headmaster's office itself stands as the eternal guardian, a chamber suspended in time where light and shadow have danced for over a millennium. Picture the firelight flickering across those gilded frames, illuminating faces etched with triumph and regret. During Dumbledore's long vigil from 1956 to 1997, the portraits would lean in, their voices a chorus of wisdom, urging restraint against the gathering storm. Yet when darkness claimed the chair, Slytherin's early iron fist, Phineas Nicholas Black's sneering disdain, Dippet's fumbling oversight, Umbridge's pink-clad tyranny, Snape's shadowed pretense, the same portraits shifted uneasily in their canvases. They saw Slytherin seal his basilisk below, Black mutter prejudices from his perch, Dippet wring his hands over Riddle crunsps, Umbridge batter futilely at the door that barred her, and Snape stare into the pensieve, haunted by secrets no one yet grasped. This cycle of light and shadow reveals no simple pattern, but a relentless pulse. Dumbledore's era bathed the office in Phoenix Song and Lemon Drops, a beacon against Voldemort's rise. McGonagall's own tenure, post-war, restored that glow with unyielding discipline and quiet compassion. Yet the dark headmasters left their stains, portraits that argue still. Phineas Nigellus forever decrying Muggleborns from his frame, his great-great-grandson Sirius scorning him even in memory. The office absorbs it all, its instruments whirring softly, the sorting hats slumbering nearby, as if the room itself breathes the school's survival through these swings. Light leaders mend what shadow breaks, but each eclipse tempers the flame, making it burn fiercer, and at the heart of it all lingers Salazar Slytherin, the founder whose shadow stretches longest. We know he championed pure blood lines, clashing with his fellow founders until he vanished, leaving the Chamber of Secrets as his venomous legacy. But what of his true intentions? Did he seek to purge the school of Muggleborns out of blind hatred, or did he fear a deeper threat? Perhaps Muggle persecutions rising in the 10th century, witch hunts that could engulf young wizards untrained in secrecy. His Basilisk, guardian of that hidden lair, waited centuries for a pure-blood heir like Tom Riddle to unleash it. Yet Slytherin's own portrait, if it ever graced these walls, remains absent, a deliberate void. Was it disdain from the others, or his own choice to fade into myth? Whispers in old tomes suggest he foresaw divisions that would fracture the wizarding world, building the chamber not just to destroy, but to preserve Slytherin House's essence against dilution. The mystery endures because no definitive record survives. Only the serpent's hiss echoing through plumbing, and the diadem he left cursed in the room of requirement. Twisted by time into Voldemort's tool, Slytherin guards his secrets still, challenging us to question if villainy was his aim, or a safeguard gone monstrously awry. These portraits, alive with argument, form the office's living memory. Phineas Nigellus, ousted in 1925 to decades of unpopularity, grumbled from his frame during Umbridge's brief reign in 1996, her high-pitched decrees bouncing off walls that refused her command. Snape, in his scant months from September 1997 to May 1998, endured their counsel or scorn as he navigated his double agent's path, the Carrows' cruelties filling the dungeons below. Even Dippet, who spanned from 1925 to around 1971, watched Riddle's deceptions unfold. His own expulsion of Hagrid, a grave epithet painted forever in regretful strokes. Closing the book on a millennium of Hogwarts' most controversial leaders feels like sealing a grimoire that refuses to stay shut. Slytherin forged the mould of division in the late 10th century. Black embodied entrenched bigotry through the 19th and into the 20th. Dippet's weakness let evil germinate in the 30s and 40s. Umbridge wielded ministry malice in her 80 days of 1996. Snape cloaked heroism in horror during Voldemort's final grip. Together they tested the castle's soul, from Quidditch bans and blood purges to unforgivable curses in classrooms. Yet Hogwarts prevailed, its staircases twisting away from tyrants, its house elves and ghosts rallying in the shadows. Their legacies linger not in glory, but in cautionary firelight. The portraits ensure no headmaster forgets. Power unchecked devours. Slytherin's enigma reminds us purity's pursuit blinds. Black's unpopularity proves prejudice isolates. Dippet's era warns of ignored threats. Umbridge's fall shows cruelty rebounds. Snape's arc reveals redemption's quiet forge, as McGonagall gazed upon them all, reshaping the school into something brighter, the eternal guardian. The office itself whispered onward. The cycle turns, light reclaiming shadow, but the darkness taught endurance. Hogwarts stands vigilant, its history a spell against repetition. Thank you for journeying through these shadowed halls with me tonight. If this chapter lulled you towards sleep, drop in the comments how the series has woven into your nights. Rest well. What did you think of this journey? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this changed your perspective or taught you something new, consider subscribing for more mind-expanding content. And if you know someone who would find this as fascinating as you did, share it with them. These are the kind of conversations that matter